Anna sat at the kitchen table, reviewing her upcoming speech. She'd read it, reread it, and read it again, searching for flaws. But there were none. In her 3 pages of notes, she had all her arguments and every anticipated counter-argument. Confident, she concluded that with this speech, she couldn't lose. She might not win, but at least she couldn't lose. Thinking about what she did have to lose brought a smile to her face. No, it was way too much. She couldn't dare risk it. Happy with the words, she turned her mind to timing. If she laid it out to Tom slowly, it might sink into his logical mind, and he might see her need and agree. However, that would give him time to mount counter-arguments. Knowing him for 12 years, she knew his mind like her own, and accepted that in a battle of logic he would win. So slowly was out. That left her preferred option shock and awe. Hit him hard, hit him fast, and get his agreement before he had time to settle down. Was his agreement critical? Hell yeah. Without it, nothing was going to happen. That was the risk-free part. Nervously, Anna stood up and pottered about the kitchen, distracting herself from the pain she knew she was about to inflict on her husband. He didn't deserve it, but without it, she wouldn't get what she deserved. She had to do it. She assuaged her conscience by reminding herself he had forced her into this corner where she had no choice. Ergo, it was his fault. Anna looked around the kitchen, trying to remember the last time she'd been there alone on a weekday. It had to be at least 4 months. Up until then, it had always been her getting home first and greeting the kids when they got home from school. Why had that changed? Simple. His name was James. James was drafted in 5 months ago from another office as her boss. For the first month, they'd maintained a standard boss-subordinate relationship. That changed when he asked her to work late one day. After finishing the work, he thanked her by taking her out for dinner. They discovered they had much in common, although he was 10 years her junior and single. They shared many common interests, such as the arts, movies, and fashion. Slowly, the compliments about her work and eventually her looks increased. She was flattered both as a proud employee and as a woman who was starting to worry about the effects of time on her attractiveness. Soon, it became a regular thing. Within a month, all pretense of work was dropped, and they hung around after hours just talking, either at work or over coffee somewhere. Within another month, his complaints of being lonely or hating to eat by himself led her to skip dinner with her family and discreetly go to restaurants with him with increasing frequency. By 3 months in, that included movies and shows as well. It also included many weekends while she showed the out-of-towner the local sights. She covered it at home by saying there was a promotion in the offing, and she wanted to stand out from the crowd by putting in the extra hours. She was only slightly ashamed by this ruse, which was made worse by her husband, Tom, fully supporting her newfound ambition. She knew it was wrong for a married woman to behave this way, but damn it, after 15 years of being a selfless mother, she deserved to do something for herself, a couple of hours a day. When she was with James, she felt appreciated and more alive. Sure, her husband said he appreciated her all the time, but there were only so many ways for him to say it, so it had gotten stale over the years. When she increased her workload, Tom had quietly stepped up and taken up the slack. After the 3rd time of him coming home to find the kids home alone, he voiced the opinion that he thought it inappropriate for their youngest at 14 to be unsupervised. Anna was still embarrassed at how she'd snapped at that. Yelling at him if he wasn't comfortable with it, he could reduce his hours. Shed woke in the next day to find him already gone to work at 5:00 a.m. That night she came home to find him already there, helping the kids with their homework and with dinner started. With only a slight tremble in her voice, she'd thanked him for supporting her career. When her weekend work started, Tom had risen again and taken over the main responsibility of entertaining the kids. Far from finding it a chore, he seemed to love it and rediscovered his purpose in life. The kids loved reconnecting with their dad, and much fun was had by all. Even their eldest at 16 gave up some of his time hanging out with his friends to go places with dad and siblings. Until 2 months ago, Anna's relationship with James had been purely platonic. Then, one Saturday, after a nice lunch and a shower of compliments, James had suggested getting a hotel room for the afternoon. Anna had laughed at his joke before noticing with dismay he wasn't smiling. That had shaken her to the core. She quickly made her excuses and left. All the way home, she'd mentally cursed James for endangering their friendship by trying to make it sexual. He should have known she would never cheat on her husband. Monday at work was devastating for Anna. James treated her coldly and professionally. By the end of the week, she was really missing him. There had been no deep and meaningful conversations, no lunches, and absolutely no compliments, even though she'd hung back after work every single day. She recognized the compliments and other affirmations of her professional and womanly strong points had become very important to her ego. Sure, Tom was attentive and complimentary, but it just wasn't the same. Two things happened that week that should have screamed obsession to Anna. The first was on Wednesday when she came home to a partially completed dinner. Tom asked her to finish it while he picked their eldest up from soccer training. When he returned, Anna was still sitting where she'd been when he left. Dinner was late. That triggered the first of their conversations. Tom questioned whether the focus on work was worth it. In front of the children, she chewed him out, taking all her frustrations of being ignored by James out on Tom. She'd calmed down by the time they went to bed. She denied any problems when Tom asked if they were okay. Before the conversation was even finished, Tom saw her mind was focused somewhere else. Consequently, he didn't even try for some intimacy. All the knockbacks were getting a little demeaning. On Friday afternoon, James came and apologized to Anna. He excused his behavior as being prompted by having close contact with such a beautiful, desirable woman and being lonely. Anna forgave him but reminded him she was a married woman who intended to remain faithful to her husband. James responded by asking Anna if any of her colleagues would be able to relieve his frustration. This triggered every possessive instinct within her. She quickly replied in the negative. They parted good enough friends that she agreed to sneak off and take in lunch and a show the next day. The second obsession trigger occurred when Anna arrived home that Friday night. Tom and the kids were packing for camping. When she asked what was going on, they replied this long weekend trip had been planned for a month. They all stared at her incredulously when she denied all knowledge of it. She simply didn't believe them when they reminded her little else had been talked about over dinner all week. In her opinion, they were unreasonable when they refused to reschedule to the following weekend, saying that this was the last long weekend before the winter set in. In the end, a disgruntled family left without her, and a very pissed Anna stayed home alone. Her only solace was their absence gave her 3 days to make up with James. It hit her hard when, after the show the next day, James announced he was unavailable Sunday and Monday. Anna tried to contact her family to meet them wherever they were, but they were obviously in a no-service area. Anna was still pissed off when they returned. She didn't want to lay into Tom for not knowing where they had gone, just in case they told her, and she hadn't listened. She turned him down for intimate contact that night on the ground she had to be fresh for work. Vague alarm bells went off in her head when Tom suggested her ambitions were leading to her estrangement from her own family. By the time he'd recovered from the chewing out she gave him over this, she was back to planning her week with James. She woke with a start before 3:00 a.m. It suddenly hit her what damage this weekend and the conversation the previous night was doing to her perfect marriage and family. She felt a chill at the thought of Tom leaving and forcing her to raise the children on her own. This was nothing compared to the thought of losing the wonderful, loving, considerate man she'd chosen as a life partner. Vowing to cool her extramarital friendship, she snuggled up to her husband. He felt wonderful in her arms. She considered waking him up in that special way she used to when they were much younger, but decided against it. The poor man had to be up in less than 2 hours. Subconsciously, Tom must have felt her intimate need, so he came up for a big hug when she walked in the door later that night. Back under James' spell by then, Anna hardly returned it. This set the scene for the next month. Within a week, things with James were back to normal. Her marriage and family were as well. However, it was the new normal where the four of them laughed, joked, and interacted while Anna distractedly sat outside it all, totally unaware of the worried looks Tom threw her way many times a night. Finally, Tom cracked and begged her to give up on the promotion. He reiterated his love for her and confessed his terror at the effect all this extra work was having on their family. Unfortunately, he couldn't have picked a worse day to bare his soul. Just that day, James had finally re-announced his wish to take their friendship to the next level, subtly but firmly making their continued friendship contingent on her agreeing. Anna was very distracted. The thought of losing all those ego-boosting compliments made her shudder. As Tom begged and pleaded, Anna was debating what to do. It was a complete no-brainer. If it came down to a straight choice between James and her husband, Tom would win. But there wasn't a lot she wouldn't do to avoid making the choice. She needed both of them, one for her need for stability, the other to bolster her flagging early 40s ego. Long after her husband had lapsed into silence, Anna was using her considerable intelligence to find a risk-free solution. By 2 a.m., she had it. The very next night, she explained her plan to James, reiterating she would never cheat on her husband. She laid it all out. She would lure Tom into having a threesome where James would just happen to end up as the third wheel. The men had never met, so it would simply be a matter of seemingly choosing James at random. If that worked, she'd work on a way of getting some solo time with James later, with Tom's blessing. It wouldn't be cheating. She did warn James it would take a while to talk Tom around and asked him to be patient. James didn't reply immediately. He considered the time he'd already invested in this pursuit. He had complete faith that once her artificial line had been crossed, the floodgates would be open, and she would be his whenever he wanted her, if that is what he chose to do. Warning her he wouldn't wait forever, he readily agreed. Anna was so grateful she didn't object when he kissed her properly for the first time. She drew the line after several minutes when he firmly cupped her left breast in his hand. Angry at her own excitement, she pushed his hand away, reminding him of her commitment to be faithful. They went to dinner. She wasn't particularly nervous about raising the subject with Tom. They'd always been open and honest about their fantasies and had role-played more than a few over the years. She was too tired to raise it that night, preferring to masturbate after Tom was asleep. The next night, the atmosphere just didn't feel right, so she again waited for Tom to go to sleep. This time, as she masturbated, she couldn't help a small moan escaping. Her imagined coupling with James was just so hot. With a small amount of horror, she was interrupted by Tom rolling towards her. "This is a bit unfair, isn't it?" "Why? What's unfair? You laying there pleasuring yourself after knocking me back for the last few months." Anna was shocked. Surely it couldn't have been that long. Has it really been that long, darling? Too bloody right it has. Since you started going for that promotion, you've either been too tired, too grumpy, or simply told me to bugger off when I tried to start something. Even feeling as chagrined as she did, Anna still recognized this was a golden opportunity to raise the subject she wanted to. She spent a few minutes justifying to herself the effect her obsession with James was having on her marriage. Then she sought a way to open the conversation. She was so busy she didn't take note when Tom sighed and turned away again. She realized bringing up the idea of a threesome after a 4-month drought may affect Tom's ego. It might imply that he alone just didn't do it for her anymore. No, the safer path was to reestablish relations with Tom first. She rolled towards him and tugged him to her. Once on his back, he began snoring. Anna was too embarrassed to even continue masturbating. She had to get this out of her system shortly before it did any damage to her marriage. Anna worried. Until James came into her life, there was absolutely nothing wrong with her marriage or her sex life. After 2 days of inaction, James was a little upset with Anna. The next day she had to kiss him again to stop him criticizing her. This time he behaved and didn't go for a grope. It did make her horny enough to tongue-kiss Tom when she got home and rub his groin while doing it. Tom's eyes lit up. They didn't even wait for the kids to go to bed. As soon as dinner was over, they retired to the little outdoor shed Tom had built to house their jacuzzi. It was his solution to maintaining a healthy sex life as their children got older. Once inside, Tom attacked her. After her commenting on his impatience, Tom defended himself by saying he didn't want to give her time to change her mind. Tom was considerate as usual, but Anna only managed to hit her peak when she closed her eyes and remembered James' bulge twitching against her leg that afternoon. The next morning, Saturday, Tom woke her in that special way she used to love, with his tongue caressing her sex. He no doubt thought she put the pillow over her face to stifle her moans. In reality, even with her eyes closed, she had trouble pretending Tom was James. It was a pleasant but confusing experience for Anna. That night, she felt bold enough to broach the touchy subject with her husband. After complimenting his performance over the last 24 hours, she delicately raised that after so many years, they were getting a little stale, and she had become a bit obsessed with the idea of a threesome. With his open and honest outlook on life, Tom immediately suggested they role-play it. This was going better than Anna expected, so it was back to the jacuzzi. After every session, they collapsed on the custom-provided mattress, exhausted. In fact, the renewed sex with Tom almost made Anna give up her plan. By a week and a half into what she thought of as Tom's conditioning period, James was getting very impatient, and the compliments were definitely drying up. She found herself having to kiss him practically every day or two just to keep him interested. Eventually, even that wasn't enough, and she felt James withdrawing again. She knew she had to advance her timetable. 2 days later, after another marathon session in the jacuzzi shed, Anna thought she finally had the courage to ask the question this had all been leading up to. Tom beat her to it. "Darling, the last few weeks have been great. It's been a huge turn-on doing you while our guest licks you. Do you think you would lick her as well? How can we role-play that?" Anna recoiled in shock as she realized the last 2 weeks of what seemed like total connectedness had actually been a huge disconnect. "What? You think I want a threesome with another woman? Isn't that what this has all been about?" Tom sounded genuinely confused. Anna realized they'd never talked details. She couldn't blame him for the misunderstanding. "No, Tom, I was thinking about another man." "Oh." Tom realized there was no time like the present. Stealing her courage, she launched into her prepared speech. "Listen, honey, the last few weeks have been real exciting for me. Is there any chance we can think about doing it for real with an actual man? I mean..." Tom actually gave this the serious consideration he thought it deserved. "Well, Anna, off the cuff, I'd have to say it would almost certainly be a bad move. I can't see any good coming from it. I thought the idea of a threesome with another woman turned us both on. I've got to tell you, the idea of you with another man does nothing for me. What if it was really important to me?" Again, Tom thought, "I'd have to think about it, Anna." Just thinking out loud about the only way I would ever consider bringing in another guy would be if another time we invited another girl. "No, you wouldn't have to do anything with her, Anna. I said no, Tom. The mere thought of you with another woman just makes me so angry. Forget it, Tom. It's never going to happen." "Then you have answered your own question, Anna. Another guy isn't going to happen either." Anna heard in his tone the end of her plans. There was no way she was going to compromise, so Tom wasn't even going to think about it. What the hell was she going to tell James tomorrow? As expected, James was not a happy camper. He criticized Anna for not trying hard enough, then snubbed her for the rest of the week. As usual, Anna took out her frustrations on Tom. Monday, James asked her to stay behind so they could talk. He seemed genuinely sad when he told Anna he could no longer stand being around such a beautiful woman who was sexually unavailable to him. Her husband had forced her into a position where she had to choose between them, and she had chosen her loser husband. He respected that, even though it hurt. He kissed her goodbye, asked her to remember him fondly, and knew she would understand their relationship had to return to a professional one. He then turned to walk away. "Wait." James stopped and turned. "Give me another week, please." "What do you have in mind, Anna?" "I don't know, James. Just give me a week to plan something." With another kiss, they parted. Tom noted Anna was back to her old distracted self again that weekend. He thought about her hot and cold mood swings over the last few weeks and about her recent obsession with threesomes. Now he had another thing to worry about. Why had her lipstick been smeared when she came home late on Friday? Time to do some digging. Not having participated in any family activities over the weekend gave her more time to think. Anna excitedly cornered James after work on Monday. His eyes lit up as she explained her plan. Halfway through, he interrupted. "You know, Anna, he may want something in return for this. Well, there are things I'm willing to give him and things that are not negotiable. We'll have to see. Just remember, sweetheart, if at the end of the day he says no, I will give up our plans altogether." "I'm sorry, James, that's just how it has to be." James said he did understand, and if she needed someone to do a dry run on, he was always available. With his tacit approval, Anna pretty much spent all of Tuesday and Wednesday at work planning her speech. She started with the basic premise that whatever she did had to be risk-free. It couldn't possibly endanger her marriage and family. She likened it to playing poker. She'd won a 1,000 pot and didn't want to risk it. She wanted to lock that in a time-delayed safe so even she couldn't access it. Then she could continue playing, knowing she could win another 1,000. But even if she lost, she still had the original. On Wednesday night, James took her to dinner for a full dress rehearsal. After the main course, he told her to give him her best shot. "Well, James, I've decided to hit him hard and fast tomorrow night. I'll start by reminding him how much I love him, lay it on thick about the kids, you know, how I look forward to their graduations, attending their weddings, and grandkids' christenings. Then remind him about the plans we've talked about for our retirement." James' mind drifted at this point. Typical woman, she launched straight into the emotive stuff that would work brilliantly with another woman. They never seemed to realize men were far less emotive and more rational. "Are you listening, James?" "Of course, Anna." "Well, after that, I'll remind him that I gave him an opportunity to participate in me having some harmless fun, but he rejected it. I'll tell him he forced my hand and I intend on taking a lover Friday night. Before he has a chance to process this, I'll lay it on thick about it being just sex, a bit of unemotional fun. I'm sorry, James, I'll have to lie a bit there. If he wants to prove his love for me, hell, let me do it. I reckon I have a 70-30 chance of him saying yes right there and then. What do you think so far?" James silently put the odds much lower than this, but wasn't about to say it. He put his odds of scoring this mile high less than 50%. But what the hell? It was the thrill of the chase that mattered. He reckoned he could bet her once with zero risk. Many more times, and the risk of discovery and being sacked for having sex with a subordinate would rise exponentially. Why do it more than once? He'd done this before and realized he'd already had 90% of the fun, but by maximizing the chances of Anna succeeding, he might get the last 10%. "If I was your husband at this point, I would at least demand an open marriage." "Well, he can forget that. I don't share. If he insists, I will back down straight away. Him taking another woman would end our marriage. That can't happen. You know you have the ultimate weapon to stop him, don't you?" "What weapon?" "Threaten divorce and him living in the poorhouse with no access to the kids if he insists on retaliation." "No, I couldn't hurt him like that. Not even as a threat I have no intention of following through with. Why not inflict a little pain, Anna? It's his fault after all. If he'd gone along with the threesome idea, we wouldn't be here now, would we?" At this point, James grabbed Anna's hands and looked lovingly into her eyes. "Come on, Anna, you deserve this. After 15 years as a dutiful wife and slave to an ungrateful husband and needy kids, you've earned it." Anna looked into those eyes and felt a warm tingle in her groin. "I suppose so. That's my girl." "Well, don't get too excited, James. If at the end of this conversation I even suspect Tom is not on board, then I give in completely. Fair enough. So can you see any flaws? Can you see how I can possibly lose?" James was firmly thinking about himself as he replied, "No, Anna, it's definitely a no-low situation." He shook his head at the depth of this woman's delusions. While they were waiting for dessert, Anna added a few notes to her outline. When the meal was over, James walked her out to her car and kissed her goodnight. This time she didn't resist as he cupped and squeezed her breast, but responded by pushing her leg into his crotch. She felt the twitching of his manhood through his trousers and almost swooned. James briefly thought about pressing his advantage, but that would spoil the fun. "Okay, lover, I'll book us a room for Friday night. Can we go to your place? I've never even seen it. No way. The walls are way too thin and you'll be screaming way too much. I can assure you of that." On trembling legs, Anna went home to her family. She was even more distracted than normal. At one point, she realized she was alone and everyone had gone to bed. Consequently, she slept in the next day and only woke just in time to see the kids off. She reminded them she had arranged for Tom's parents to pick them up for a sleepover that night and checked they had all they needed. She'd arranged the day off. She had to call James at least 5 times to maintain her courage during the day. She knew her major Achilles heel was her inability to lie convincingly. The obvious question Tom would raise when given her ultimatum was, did she already have someone in mind? In front of a mirror, she practiced saying no. She intended on going out and allowing herself to be seduced. Anything else would spur questions she wasn't at all comfortable with. She convinced herself that by remaining cool, calm, and collected, she could pull it off. So here she was, sitting at the kitchen table, waiting to bushwhack her husband who was due any minute. It was Thursday night, 24 hours short of a much-anticipated event. The kids were overnighting at their grandparents'. Anna was totally ready. She just kept repeating to herself shock and awe. Be firm, can't lose. I deserve this. Tom walked in at 5:30 p.m., an hour and a half after his new usual time at 4:00 p.m. Anna figured he did that because he knew she had the day off. He saw Anna sitting at the kitchen table with a 3/4 empty bottle of wine. She rarely had more than one glass, so Tom not only knew this was a very special occasion, but that her defenses would be weak. "Ha, Anna, what are we celebrating? Did you get that promotion?" "We aren't celebrating, darling, at least not yet. Please sit down. We have to talk." To Anna's surprise, Tom beat her to it. "I'm guessing this has something to do with the fact you've been so distracted for a long time now? Something to do with the fact you've almost totally ignored your family for the last half year? Something to do with the fact that apart from 2 glorious weeks, we haven't had sex for 5 months? Tom, I know. Don't tell me, Anna. Let me guess. You really love me. You are looking forward to sharing the kids' graduations, weddings, etc. with me. You can't wait until we attend our grandchildren's christenings and retire to live a life of love and luxury together. Despite all that, because I didn't go along with your plan of sharing you in a sneaky threesome, you intend on cucking me with your lover. When? Tonight? Tomorrow night?" Tom paused at this point. Alarm bells were screaming in Anna's head. Tom had just covered the first page and a half of her notes with stunning accuracy. If she'd been thinking rationally, she would have realized her husband thought much better in a crisis than she did. He'd proved it the 2 times he'd saved one of their children's lives, while she just stood there like a stunned mullet. She was well and truly rattled. In a panic, she reverted to what she knew her memorized and rememorized speech. "But I deserve this, Tom. It would just be sex, Tom. A bit of unemotional fun, something to spice things up for us." With no interruption from her husband and in her panic, Anna simply rolled into the next part of her speech, completely forgetting it was contingent on Tom's expected responses. It was the latest addition to the script, being James' suggestion of last night, and she hadn't memorized it as well as the rest. "You can't sleep with other women. I'll divorce you. I could make it so you never see the kids. The courts will take all your salary for house payments, alimony, and child support." Anna stopped, as the expression on Tom's face finally registered in her befuddled mind. It wasn't the look of hurt she'd been steeling herself to resist. It definitely wasn't the look of resigned acceptance she'd dreamed about. It was a look of thunder personified. 2. "What's his name, Anna?" "Whose name?" "Tom, the name of the guy who's been playing on your insecurities, flattering you, making you feel young again. The guy who thinks he can just take my wife away. What is his name?" Anna was so far off script she was totally incapable of rational thought. She simply responded to her husband's order, "James." "But he's not like that, not at all. How long have you been seeing him, Anna?" We haven't, Tom. I would never cheat on you. Stop lying, Anna. You've been coming home late every single day for months, going out on weekends, almost completely ignoring your family and cutting me off emotionally and physically. Was it his idea to stop sleeping with me? His idea to invite me for a threesome just so he could humiliate me? Anna was torn between being offended and horrified. How could she prove Tom was wrong? No, you've got it all wrong, Tom. The late nights and weekends were just talking, just going to dinner together. I'm calling you a liar, Anna. What about last night when you came in with your dress all creased and your lipstick all over the place? I know what you look like after a quickie. I've had years to learn. Anna was yelling now, desperate to get him to understand. No, I haven't cheated, Tom. I would never cheat. It was just talking, dinners, and kissing. You have to believe me, Tom. I would never cheat. Tom stopped and rested his face in his hands. Anna had never seen him cry, and she wasn't about to now. They both sat there stunned for several minutes. Tom finally looked up when he thought his face was no longer giving anything away. He was wrong. Anna was a perceptive woman and knew eyes closed to tears when she saw them. She was horrified she'd caused this amount of pain. This couldn't be happening. She couldn't lose. Desperately marshaling her thoughts, she remembered her script. Last page, the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card. That's it. She would give up her plans with James. She would capitulate completely. No harm, no foul, right? The situation was salvageable. Unfortunately, once again, Tom beat her to it. Well done, Anna. Your cheating has killed our marriage and our family. Hell, it has killed me. I can't believe you threatened to take my kids away from me. Tom rose and slowly shuffled towards the door. Something about the way he said "killed me" sent an extra alarm bell ringing. It sounded so dead and final. Tom made it out the door and almost to his car before she recovered enough to chase after him. He hadn't given her a chance to play her get-out-of-jail-free card. He had his hand on the door handle of his car before she was close enough to cry out. "But I didn't cheat!" Tom stopped dead. Without turning around, he spoke in a deadpan voice. "Staying away from your family to spend time with another man while lying to us about the reason, going to dinner with him, kissing him. If that's not cheating, I don't know what is. Anna, it's over." Anna sank to her knees, too shocked and exhausted to support herself. She watched her husband drive off, too stunned to even cry. Can't lose, she reflexively thought back to her preparations for their confrontation. The only time the dissolution of their marriage should have been discussed was when she issued her hollow threat. It had never occurred to her Tom could dissolve it as well. Anna gave herself the luxury of feeling sorry for herself for a little over an hour. The knowledge she had perhaps terminally ruined a really good thing was just too big a deal to handle, and she shoved it forcibly into the background. This left another big worry in her heart. Tom's words as he left, but more importantly, his demeanor, had set off all sorts of alarm bells in her head. For the first time, she worried about the effect her ultimatum really had on her husband, a man she knew lived for her and his family. She was terrified he may harm himself. Would he? She'd stated plainly what they both knew: in the event of a divorce, he would lose custody of the children and lose most of his pay and assets. They both knew of couples where the ex-wife refused to let the husband see his kids, supported by the court system. Would he contemplate harming himself? Hell yeah. Panic set in. There was no answer on Tom's cell. She rang her in-laws to see if Tom was there. He had been but was now gone. They were confused. Tom had only stayed a little while, then left after hugging all three of the children. Anna jumped in her car and drove around to every bar she could think of in the area, looking for his car. She was so distracted she ran out of fuel and had to call her dad to bring a gas can. He saw she was in no fit state to drive, so he took her home. Once there, she broke down and told her parents Tom had left her. She could see the hurt in her mother's eyes. Her father's words left nothing to the imagination on what he thought of his son-in-law. Eventually, her mother conceded the logic of Anna waiting at home and dropped her back to her car. Anna went home and in the wee small hours fell asleep on the couch. The nightmares finally woke her at 7 a.m. Before she could recover from the grogginess, the panic hit again. She feverishly checked her phone for messages. There were none. She dialed Tom's cell. It went straight to voicemail, like it was turned off or dead. After all, his charger was right next to hers on the kitchen counter. She rang his work only to be told he hadn't shown. She rang the police, but when she told them why her husband had left, they said she was on her own. By this time, it was 8 a.m., so she got Tom's address book and phoned every friend she could find a number for. Everyone said they hadn't seen him. She then literally spent all day driving to every possible place she could think of, returning to the house every 2 hours or so to see if Tom's car was there. It never was, and his cell continually went to voicemail. The only time reality impinged on her frantic but pointless activity was when a message arrived on her phone. It was a simple one from James High. Room 77, 6 p.m. You know how you cringe when someone runs their fingernails down a blackboard? That's what Anna's soul did when she read that message. She buried that deep as well. The next phone call was from Tom's parents. They still hadn't heard anything and wanted to know what to do with the kids. Anna asked them to look after them until further notice. Returning home, Anna sat on the couch and cried and cried. She must have slept on the couch again as she woke with a start at 3:30 a.m. She wept again as the now familiar hopelessness washed over her. She tried to picture Tom's face, but couldn't. She knew then with an illogical certainty that Tom was dead. She felt insanity beckoning. No, she thought, I can't face that. With practiced ease, that thought was buried deep as well. With dread, Anna got back in her car. As she did, she noticed her cell on the passenger seat where she left it. There was one message from her eldest and 6, from James. She listened to the single one just saying she missed her mom, but ignored the 6. Anna then spent the time until about 10 a.m. driving around the possible local suicide spots, looking for Tom's car bridges, ravines, any place out of the way where he could have parked his car and put a hose on the tailpipe. Nothing. Desperate, Anna rang his folks again, and with still no news from them, all his friends again. This time, the call to Tom's oldest friend, actually an old boss of his, gave her the suspicion he wasn't being totally honest. She looked up his address and decided to drive past his house to see if she could see Tom's car. He lived in quite an affluent neighborhood. She found the house, but there was no sign of Tom. As she drove away, her eyes were drawn to a distinctive Lexus 3 doors down. It was James' car. It was parked outside another flashy-looking house along with many others. Suddenly, the idea of getting some comfort from a man who was, above everything else, her friend appealed to her. She parked and went up the path to the front door. The sounds of muted party inside told her a Saturday afternoon party was going on. Beside the door was a panel flush with the wall with a security keypad, bell push, and intercom button. She pressed a button. The door was answered by the general manager of her company. "Hello, Anna, isn't it?" "Yes, Mr. Goldsmith, I saw James Stanhope's car outside. Could I speak to him, please?" "Of course, Anna. Would you like to come in?" Anna thought of her 2-day-old clothes and haggard looks. "No, thank you, sir. I'll wait here if it's okay with you." "Sure, I'll get him for you." A little over a minute later, James came through the door. He took one look at Anna, then looked around to make sure they weren't being observed. He deliberately shut the door, took Anna in his arms, pressed her against the wall, and kissed her. Anna was torn between her need for comfort and her need to blame someone for her desperate predicament. The human craving for comfort won with a compromise. She broke the kiss and just hugged him desperately. "What happened last night, Anna? Where were you?" "Oh, James, it's terrible. Tom came home Thursday night and it was like he knew everything. He accused me of cheating on him. I told him that we had only talked, been out to dinner a few times and kissed, but I could tell he didn't believe me. He knew what I was going to say. He even knew I was going to tell him that I planned to have sex with you last night. I think he may have gone somewhere and done something stupid. No one has seen him since Thursday." At that point, the door opened again, and a furious-looking woman stormed out. "You bastard! Is this what you were doing while I was waiting to move up here? We moved to get away from all this crap. You promised never again." At this, she lost it and went for James' face with her fingernails. He put his arms up to protect himself on pure reflex. Anna grabbed the screaming woman to protect her friend. The angry woman, seeing an unprotected target, swung around and with a tremendous backhand knocked her against the wall of the house. Anna's back once again inadvertently pressed the intercom button. Briefly, her cry of pain was heard in the foyer. She slid slowly to the ground, stunned. The formidable woman returned to trying to get through James' defenses. Suddenly, the big boss came out the door and gently but firmly grabbed the flailing woman's arms. "Come now, Mrs. Stanhope. Violence isn't the answer. That bitch has been messing around with my husband." "Yes, I heard, but there are more civilized ways of sorting problems out than murder." He looked from James to Anna and back. "You two, my office, 900 Monday." He took James' wife's arm and led her back inside, closing the door behind him. James let out a sob and bolted for his car, leaving Anna still slumped on the ground, suffering from severe brain overload. She finally summoned the mental energy to go home. She rang her mom, who, when she heard what a terrible state Anna was in, convinced her father to pick her up and bring her to her childhood home. She cried all night and slept most of the next day before crying all night again. At 11:00 a.m. Monday, the general manager of Anna's company met with his HR manageress. "So what do you want to do, boss? I can't really do anything until I get her side of the story. Plus, I promised Mrs. Stanhope that I wouldn't fire her husband until she'd made up her mind what she wants to do. I know she's taken the kids and gone to her mother's place. We can't fire Mrs. Brown for cause until we get her story, can we?" "No, not really. But she wasn't here today or Friday and hasn't called in sick. If we haven't heard from her by the close of business tomorrow, she is in breach of her contract and essentially fires herself." "Good, that sounds much cleaner. Did you believe his story that they never had sex, just kissed and had intimate conversations? Who cares, boss? It's still cheating, however you look at it. Yes, you're right. Why can't people just be satisfied with what they have?" The HR manageress just shrugged her shoulders and left. By Monday evening, Anna had recovered enough to ring the in-laws to check on the children. She thought she had the strength to see the kids now, but didn't want to face Tom's parents. She couldn't stand the thought their son might be dead, and she was the cause. She would ad-lib a way of getting them to drop the children home without facing the music. Shocked is just not a strong enough word to describe how Anna felt when Tom's mother told her all three kids had no wish to see her, and if she came over, they would call the police. Anna didn't recover in time to say anything before the connection was broken. Anna woke up very confused. She was on the kitchen floor, stiff and sore. She realized with shock she'd wet herself. She staggered to the bathroom and had a long shower. As she was drying herself, the setting sun caught her attention. It had been just after sunset when she'd made that phone call. She rushed downstairs and looked at her cell phone screen. It was 6:00 p.m. Tuesday. She had been out of it for damn near 24 hours. What the hell? One of the advantages was she felt fresher than she had in days. She used her resurgent energy to resolve she would take back control of her life. The sudden realization Tom could be dead tried to bring her down, but she managed to suppress it. One of the sources of her strength had always been her children. She decided to go to the in-laws' house unannounced and bring them back. Arriving at Tom's parents' place, she was surprised to see her parents' car there. As she pulled up, they were just coming out the door. They grabbed her and hustled her back to her car. Anna resisted, screaming she wanted to see her children. Her father told her they weren't there, then told her to follow them back to their place, which Anna did. When she walked in the door, her mom was putting the kettle on. "Where are my children?" "Calm down, Anna. They're fine. Tom has them," her father said. "You saw Tom? He's alive?" "Of course. We've just spent an hour talking to him. Where is he?" Her father looked at her mother. They were obviously uncomfortable. He's taking the kids to meet some people." Anna's mother interrupted impatiently. "Anna, Tom told us his version of what happened last week. I must say it was much more believable than that fiction you told us. We're both very disappointed in you, not to mention ashamed. What were you thinking, girl?" Anna bowed her head and remained silent. Her mother continued, "To answer your question, after you gave him no choice but to leave, Tom went back to work and met an old friend." "Oh God, not Debbie." Deborah Harris was the daughter of the guy that owned Tom's company. She was an ex-girlfriend of Tom's and had been a minor source of worry to Anna for years. Despite Tom's reassurances, Anna knew they'd only separated in the first place when Deb was sent to an exclusive business college far away from their hometown. She also knew Deborah Harris was recently divorced. The look between her parents confirmed her worst fears. When she saw what a state he was in, she took Tom home. He needed somewhere to stay, so he went with her. He's been there since then. Anna, he came and got the kids tonight so they could meet Debbie and her children to see if they all get on. Tom assures us that nothing has ever happened between them prior to this and hasn't happened yet, but they seem to be getting on extremely well. He can't do that. He has to give me a chance. From what he told us, Anna, he gave you plenty of chances over the last 6 months. He said he was devastated you had lied to him about working extra to get a promotion while all the time you were cheating with another man. Who can blame him? I did not cheat, Anna's father broke in. Stupid girl, cheating doesn't just mean intercourse. He said he considered that you had cheated the first time you lied to him about working late and spent time in intimate conversation with another man, and I fully agree with him. I'll tell you, if your mother did that, she'd have gravel rash on her ass from hitting the path out front. He told us how you'd come home last Wednesday with your lipstick all smeared. Sounds like cheating to me. He quickly found your sordid little notes where you planned to bushwhack him into agreeing to let you screw around. He said it broke his heart to see how cold, calculating, and callous those notes were, detailing the carrots and the sticks you pre-planned to use. Honestly, how could you embarrass us like that? I can't believe that you threatened to never let him see his kids and send him to the poorhouse. I didn't mean it. I was going to totally give in if he wasn't willing to go along with it. He never gave me the chance. Anna returned to silence and looking down at the table when she saw both her parents shaking their heads. In the cold glare of her parents' disapproval, she saw things as Tom must have the lies, the deceit, the disrespect, and the emotional gulf between them for months. She knew her marriage was over. Her parents gave her time to come to terms with all this. How are the kids and I going to survive without Tom? Anna's parents shared a sad glance. Her dad nodded at her mom. Anna, Tom said he'd spent the last 5 days asking himself if the children would be better off with you or him. He concluded that because of the threats you made against him, he couldn't risk it being you. Her mom looked at her dad again. He took his wife's hand and squeezed it to lend her strength. I have to tell you, Anna, we agree with him. Look at it from our point of view. If we support you, then there's a chance we won't be able to see our only grandchildren again. Anna was stunned again. They gave her the time to think. She could feel the anger mounting. So, you're betraying me? Her dad couldn't help himself. You started it, Anna. This verbal slap went over Anna's head. He'll fight you all. The courts always give custody to the mother. He can't prove I cheated. I didn't cheat. Anna, he doesn't have to prove anything. He just has to want out of the marriage. The children are of an age where the family court will take their opinions into consideration when deciding custody. I'll tell you, they were there tonight, and if the court had asked them right then, you'd never see them again. And I'll tell you, when I win, you can kiss goodbye to ever seeing my children again. With her last bridge burned, Anna ran to her car, and they both screamed off. Epilogue. An interim court order was handed down 2 weeks later. Tom's employment, relationship with his children, position as primary caregiver for the previous months, new but stable living arrangement, plus the children's wishes, were added to his generous offer of visitation. Balanced against that was a bedraggled mother with no job or work references and no capacity to buy out the necessary half of the family home. The judge ruled with a clear conscience. By the time the obligatory 12 months of living apart had passed and the divorce became final, Anna had returned to much of her old self. Her parents had gladly forgiven her for the angry outburst. Most importantly, she committed to being the best mother she could be for Tom's fortnight. She even agreed to join Tom and his new fiancée for a week. When the final paperwork came through, she barely batted an eyelid when the nasty email arrived from James blaming her for his divorce and firing. Many nights of pondering and self-reflection had made her conclude the reason her marriage failed was she was just greedy when she should have been happy with what she had. She seized the opportunity to try for more. Really, the only thing that marred her resigned happiness were the nightmares. Initially, they happened every night, but were fading to once or twice a week. The worst was what sounded like a church choir singing, "Shock and awe, be firm, can't lose, I deserve this." Nowadays, she seemed to be able to go back to sleep fairly easily by saying to herself, "Well, 1 out of 4 ain't bad, is it? Thank you for watching."
There I was, sitting in front of the television, feigning interest in the soccer match. It was a Saturday afternoon. Lena and I had just finished the grilled chicken dinner she had made. While she busied herself with the dishes, my gaze was fixed on the screen, but most of the time, when she wasn't glancing my way, I found myself watching her. Lena is an appealing woman, not exceptionally beautiful, but very easy on the eyes. Her most striking feature is her curvy figure. Standing tall with shoulder-length brunette hair, she has a unique way of looking at you with her large brown eyes that can send a shiver down your spine. At least, that's how it feels to me. We've been married for a decade now and have 2 lovely daughters, Lily, who is 9, and Grace, who is 8. With both of us working full-time, my mother looks after our daughters while we're at work. Either Lena or I pick them up from my mom's house after work each day. After Grace was born, I underwent a vasectomy. We both agreed that 2 children were sufficient for us. But what was occupying my mind at the moment certainly wasn't our 2 daughters, who were now quietly playing together in their room. No, I was thinking about the many changes I had noticed in Lena in the last few months. These changes, like the way she now dressed and her longer hours at work, seemed insignificant on their own, but looking at the whole of the many changes she had undergone, it was concerning, especially her attitude at home. It seemed to me that something was preoccupying her. On many occasions, while we were watching TV, I would make comments about the movie or the program we were watching. Judging by her responses, I could tell she wasn't paying attention to what she seemed to be watching. Her eyes were on the TV, and she seemed to be engaged with what was happening on the screen, but it was evident that her mind was elsewhere. Then, in bed at night, even though our sex life was still decent, 2 or 3 times a week, she would toss around for hours before finally falling asleep after we were intimate. I knew that something was bothering her, but the problem was she wasn't sharing it with me. I didn't think it would be wise to approach her directly and ask what was worrying her, since I knew it would probably push her further away. I hoped that whenever she felt ready to discuss what was troubling her, she would. We had always shared everything before and were always open to talking things through. So why was she so secretive now? Lena was an exceedingly good cook, always eager to try different dishes for me. She would spend hours online looking for new recipes. She even joined chat groups where she talked with other women and exchanged ideas about new dishes and how to prepare them. I even knew her chat name, having seen it often when I passed by her on my way to the bathroom while she was on the computer. She used the name Diana. I figured she chose that name since her father always called her that. She would chat almost every evening with those women in this special food preparation group, and I knew it wasn't just food they were talking about. As I sat there watching her clean the table, a thought suddenly occurred to me. What was stopping me from using my laptop while she was chatting, joining that special food preparation group under a fictitious name, and seeing what they were all talking about? I told myself that I could even talk to her there without her realizing she was talking to me. But later, after thinking more about it, I realized that it was a low move, and I didn't have the heart to do it, especially with the possibility of her finding out I was spying on her. A week later, things hadn't improved. Lena was still lost in her thoughts, and even when one of our daughters tried to get her attention, she barely noticed them when she was at home. I knew then that I had to do something. That's when I decided to spy on her, and even talk to her while she was in her chat room with those women. The next day, while I was in my office at work, I registered on the same messenger site she used under the name of New Mommy. I chose that name since it would clearly indicate that I was female, making the women in the group feel safe with me there. Lena usually logged into her chat room around 9 p.m. after our 2 daughters were in bed, and on that Wednesday evening, I was ready. As soon as I saw her enter the small room near the bathroom where her computer was, I got up and told her I was going to the basement to catch up on some paperwork. She just nodded, and I immediately went down to my home office. A few minutes later, I was in the special food preparation room, waiting for her name to appear. There were 5 other women there, and they were discussing how to make the perfect tiramisu. After 5 minutes, I was still waiting for Lena's name to appear on the list at the bottom of the screen. After another minute, one of the women asked if I knew of a special recipe for tiramisu. Of course, I knew nothing about desserts, so I got out of this situation by writing that I had never made one yet, and that was why I was in the group I wanted to learn from experienced cooks. As soon as I finished typing, I saw the name Diana appear at the top of the list. Soon, everyone was giving me tips on making tiramisu. Even Diana was telling me what type of mascarpone to use and how much of it. After a while, we were about a dozen people chatting, and it was hard to keep up. So I asked Diana if she could write her tiramisu recipe and send it to me. Of course, I gave her a new email address I had created for this purpose. The following day, while I was at work, I checked my mail. There was an email to new mommy from Diana. It was the tiramisu recipe from Lena. I was thrilled because now I had her email address. It was an address completely unknown to me. I was shocked since Lena had never hidden anything from me before. I felt a bit guilty for the rest of the day about what I had done, and I knew she must never discover that new mommy was actually her husband. The following day, I sent her an email saying I had tried her recipe, the dessert turned out great, and my husband loved it. Soon, we were emailing each other, and a week later, we began chatting outside of the special food preparation room. We both added each other as friends on the chat site, and now we could talk anytime we wanted without going into the food section of the messenger site. Lena's mood around the house and towards me continued to deteriorate over the next 2 weeks. Our intimacy was declining. We were only being intimate once a week now, and when it happened, I could tell that Lena wasn't enjoying it as she used to. It was as if I was just a physical presence. She simply lay there, mostly in the missionary position, and allowed me to use her body until I was done. Despite this, we continued to write and chat, and I now felt a lot less guilty doing this. I figured that I had to find out what was going on to try and save my marriage. Yes, in my mind, my marriage was heading in the wrong direction with her being so distant all the time from me and the children. Even intimacy with her was getting worse and less frequent as time went on. I could tell that her interest in me and our 2 daughters was secondary to something else that was occupying her mind. Of course, she was still a devoted mother, and I knew she would probably still give her life for us, but something troubling was eating away at her, and I had to find out what it was. Yes, something was going on, and I could feel it. I began to suspect that she was having an affair. I was now ready to do anything to learn more about what was happening to her. I didn't have the money to hire a private investigator to follow her around, as I've often read in stories, and there was no way for me to check on her at her place of work. For one thing, I knew very little about her coworkers and what was going on where she worked. We both had the same work schedule. She was one of the many secretaries for a large law firm, and I was a programmer for a major financial firm. So, one evening while we were chatting, I made up my mind to break the ice and get more personal with her. We were comfortable with each other by then, and it was time for me to start drawing information out of her. I told her that my real name was Sarah and that I lived in Florida. She immediately said that her name was Lena, and she was living in Texas. Sarah, what kind of work do you do, Lena? Lena, am a legal secretary. I prepare contracts and other legal documents for the lawyers who work at our firm. What about you, Sarah? I wasn't prepared to answer that question, so I had to think fast. Sarah, well, I'm not working at the moment since I'm still on maternity leave, but in 2 weeks, they'll start working again. I work in a financial firm as a teller. Lena, oh, my husband also works for a financial firm. His name is Mark, and he's a programmer there. What's your husband's name? This was going even better than I had hoped for. My wife was telling me information that I knew to be true, and in the back of my mind, I was looking forward to asking her many more personal questions. Sarah, his name is Jacob, and he sells insurance. After that, we talked about cooking and other matters. I didn't want to push things too much, so I decided to wait until our next chat session to try to get her to talk more about her personal life and her job. We didn't chat for the next 2 evenings, and on the 3rd day, I sent her an email telling her that the manager of the financial firm where I worked had called me. They had an emergency and asked if I could start working a week before my leave was due to end. They were going to pay me the extra week in cash. I wrote that I was very excited, but at the same time, I was scared to go back to work. I had thought it over the previous day and had made up my mind to pretend to Lena that I had an affair with a man working with me at the financial firm. I had planned this story so that my wife would feel more at ease confiding in her new friend. And what better way to do that than to let her in on a fictitious secret affair that I was supposedly having? I knew that if she was cheating on me, she would be more tempted to talk about it. Lena, you mentioned in your email that it frightened you to go back to work. Why is that? Sarah, I don't know if I should tell you this, but since you're my best friend, I will. I do hope you won't think any less of me after you know what I've done. Lena, we all make mistakes. After all, we're human. What have you done? Have you taken money from the financial firm? Sarah, oh no, it's nothing like that. It's just that I met a man where I work. His name is Ethan. We gradually became very good friends and much more, if you know what I mean. I then went on to tell her that I had been having an affair with this man and that it had been going on for over a year. I explained how it all began between him and me, and that during that year, we had been meeting once a week, usually on Fridays after work. I told her that intimacy with him was thrilling and exciting, but I still loved my husband and didn't want him to find out and destroy our marriage. It was plain to see that my telling Lena this story was disturbing her, since she would let me write on, without asking questions for a long time. I could imagine her at that moment sitting there in the small room on the main floor of the house in front of her computer, probably thinking about the similarity of what was happening to her if she was indeed cheating on me. At last, she did ask Sarah a question, and I watched it slowly appear on my screen. Lena, but you just had a baby. Are you sure your husband is the father? Sarah, no, I don't really know who the father is, and this is why he must never find out about my affair. I then pretended to break down crying and wrote that I had to go since I was no longer able to type. When I went into the kitchen half an hour later, Lena was sitting in front of the television, but I could tell she was in her usual deep thought and not paying attention to what was on the screen. I sat next to her on the couch, and when I reached for her hand, she looked at me. I could tell she had been crying because her eyes were very red. We talked for a few minutes, then she asked if I was ready to go to bed. I knew that she was really asking me to come and be intimate with her. I certainly was ready, since it had been over a week now that we hadn't been close. Once in bed, we were affectionate and kissed for over an hour before finally falling asleep in each other's arms, thinking about everything that was happening to our marriage. The next day at work, I was still undecided about what I was going to do. So far, I couldn't say if this fictitious friendship I had created with my wife in the chat room was a good thing or not, but it certainly contributed to us being intimate the previous evening. Up to now, I hadn't learned anything from her. I knew that first, I had to create an environment where Sarah and Lena would share information. If my wife was having an affair, she would feel more comfortable confiding in her friend, Sarah, now that she knew her secret. Lena and Sarah didn't chat during the weekend, but on Monday, I sent Lena an email at work telling her that I had a long talk with Ethan for the first time in 3 months. I was so happy about it that I had to write and tell her. That evening at home, as soon as the children were in bed, I went to the basement, got on my computer, and waited for Lena to log in so we could chat. Sarah, I'm so glad to chat with you this evening. I have good news to tell you. Lena, I got your email, and I believe I know why you seem in such a good mood, lol. Sarah, well, Ethan was as thrilled as I was to finally be able to talk to me, and I could tell that he still wants me. I'm so happy. Lena, but how come he didn't call you or try to see you in the last 3 months if he still cares for you? Sarah, well, as for calling me, it was out of the question because I think Jacob had doubts about me, and I'm pretty sure he somehow has a gadget to listen in on the house phone. As for my cell phone, well, he can easily see what numbers I call when he pays the bill. Lena, but why didn't you meet him at a motel as you used to when you were working? Sarah, no, that wouldn't have worked. I was pregnant and gaining weight over the last few months, and well, I don't think Ethan would have enjoyed being intimate with a pregnant woman. They talked for another half hour, and I could tell that my wife didn't seem to like this Ethan macho man I had made up. I was trying to show my wife the ugliness and selfishness of cheating by making Ethan appear as a self-centered macho idiot like most male cheaters are. Lena and Sarah didn't get to talk on Wednesday, but on Wednesday, they did, and my wife began to talk about what had been bothering her for the last 2 months. They talked for over an hour, and I learned that she was indeed having an affair with a lawyer who was also her boss. She said his name was Adam Stone, and he was married with one child. I had heard Lena talk about him a few times, but in the last 3 or 4 months, she hadn't mentioned his name once. Their affair had begun almost a year ago when they went to Denver together to attend a convention. I still remember that Wednesday when Lena left for the convention. She had never mentioned to me that her boss would be going with her. She explained to me that she and another secretary were going there together, leaving me with the impression that it was just the two of them. At the time, she argued that attending the convention would look good on her appraisal and help her get a raise. My wife told Sarah that on the first evening, after the group had dinner together, they went to the hotel lounge, and she and her boss had a few glasses of wine until it was late. Then he invited her to his room for a nightcap. They had more wine, and soon one thing led to another, and they were kissing, and he was touching her in ways that made her very excited. This led to them undressing each other, and before she knew it, they were being intimate. Later, when it was over, she felt terrible for cheating on her husband, and she ran crying to her room to spend the rest of the night there. The second night, for reasons she still couldn't explain to herself, it was a repeat of the first evening. But this time she spent the whole night with him in his bed. I was stunned when I read what my wife wrote. How could she do this to me and our daughters? Not only had she been intimate with this man once, but she had also done it on 2 separate occasions. She had even spent the whole night in his bed the second time. Now that the ice was broken, I wanted to learn more, so I continued asking her questions about what was going on between her boss and her, and she willingly answered all my questions. It came down to this after she got back from the convention. She felt terrible, and she didn't see him for a couple of weeks. But gradually, her resistance to his constant advances evaporated, and they began to be intimate again. At first, they did it in his office after working hours, but after a month, he started taking her to a room at the Regal Hotel where they would spend an entire afternoon. Even now, they were still going to the Regal Hotel once a week, and he was also seeing her in his office a couple of times a week after work. The anger I felt as I read her story is impossible to describe. It took all of my self-control not to go upstairs and confront her at that moment. But gradually, much of my anger was replaced with a need for revenge. I knew my marriage was over, and all I wanted now was to make her suffer for what she had done. Then I asked her, as Sarah, if she loved this Adam Stone. Her answer was quick and clear no. She didn't love him because she loved her husband more than life itself, but the intimacy with Victor was fantastic. She said, using her own words, "It's like a drug to me. The more I am with Victor, the more I want." Her affair with her boss had been going on for over a year, and since then, she had been with him 3 or 4 times a week. He was with my wife much more often than I was. I could remember all those times when I had longed to be with her, but she always had an excuse. But judging by what she wrote to Sarah, she was always ready and eager for him. She was giving to another man what rightfully belonged to me. I was paying the price so he could enjoy her body as much as he wanted. No wonder I had noticed a change in her attitude for some time now. But come to think of it, I told myself, by now she must be planning to leave me to be with Victor. But I knew he was a married man with a child. Was he in love with my wife? Did he find her a better partner? Or was it the thrill of cheating on his wife and making me a cuckold that drove him? Sarah and Lena had been chatting for well over an hour now, and I felt emotionally drained. There were so many questions still unanswered, but the answers had to wait. I had to think about what I had just learned, so I pretended the baby needed me, and with a promise of chatting again in a day or 2, I said goodbye. What is a man to do when he discovers his world is collapsing around him, when he learns that his wife is no longer exclusive to him and is being regularly with another man? When she is being with this man even more often than she is with her lawful husband? How should a man react when he learns from his wife's own mouth that being with another man is like a drug to her, and she can no longer do without it? Oh yes, I know she did say that she loved me more than life itself, but I certainly couldn't forget the fact that she was regularly giving her body and soul to this stranger. How could she love our daughters and me, and at the same time betray us? She was living in a world of passion while I was in a world of anguish, pain, and neglect. I knew I had to make her pay for what she was doing to us. I definitely knew a way to punish her terribly, and that was to keep her away from our daughters. I had to divorce her and somehow retain full custody of our 2 daughters. This would be the worst thing that could happen to her. I could then move far away to another state so she wouldn't be able to see them often. That would be hell for her. I also intended to let Victor's wife know about his affair with my wife. Then I could sue the firm where they both worked for breaking up my marriage. Yes, I intended to do all of these things, but first, I had to find a way to prove she was cheating on me with Victor. It was extremely difficult for me to act normally around her after that, but since her mind was preoccupied with her affair and not getting caught, she didn't notice my sad state of mind. So, for Lena, life went on pretty much as it had for the last year. It was Wednesday evening, and it had been 2 days since she and Sarah had chatted. That morning, as Sarah, I sent her an email asking if she could be online that evening. She replied that she would chat at the usual time. I had already prepared a series of questions I wanted to ask her, and even though I knew her answers would only cause me more pain, I needed to know how much she cared for Victor and what her plans for the future were. I was in front of my computer in the basement even before the children were asleep, and as soon as she logged on, I greeted her. "Sarah, I'm glad to finally talk to you. For the last 2 days, I kept thinking about what you said last time. Lena, I hope what I said didn't shock you too much, and that you don't think I'm a bad person. Sarah, how could I judge you? I've done much worse than you did. After all, we're both only human. Lena, it made me feel much better to talk about all this with you. There's no one here who can understand what I'm going through. I used to talk about all my problems with my husband, but I certainly can't discuss this one with him. LOL. Sarah, do you think your husband knows something about what's going on?" Lena, no. I'm sure he suspects nothing. He's very trusting. If he did, he certainly would go into a fit. He can be very mean, and I certainly wouldn't want to provoke him. Sarah, you mentioned the other day that your husband had a vasectomy after the birth of your last child. Aren't you afraid Victor might impregnate you? Lena, no. I'm not worried about that since I've been on the pill for over a year now, ever since Victor and I began. Sarah, your husband must never find out that you're taking pills. You must be hiding them somewhere safe, I suppose. Lena, yes, they're hidden in a safe place. I still have a 3-month supply hidden in a shoebox in my bedroom. Each morning when he's in the shower, I take my daily pill. I could tell my wife was enjoying telling her friend how easy it was to fool me. Not only was she cheating on me, but she was also taking pleasure in making a fool out of me. But now I was preparing to ask her the big question. Sarah, do you intend to leave your husband for Victor? Lena, this will never happen. I really love my husband, and I certainly don't love Victor. Intimacy with Victor is great and wonderful, but we don't make love, if you see what I mean. This is why I'm so on edge. I do want the intimacy with Victor to continue, but at the same time, I certainly don't want my husband to find out what I'm doing. Sarah, wow, you want your cake, and you want to eat it too. Your husband is bound to find out, don't you think? Lena, no, he won't. Victor and I are very careful. Remember, Victor is married too, and he would get into deep trouble if his wife found out about us. Sarah, is Victor a better lover than your husband? Is he bigger than your husband? Lena, no, my husband is a wonderful lover, but Victor is, well, different. I suppose it's the excitement and the danger of being caught that makes it so good. As for Victor, well, he's a little bigger, but I don't think it makes much difference. Like I said, Mark and I make love, while with Victor, it's just sex. Do you see the difference? Huh? I was shocked to discover how frivolously my wife was talking about her cheating. It was as if it was a game for her. I had to know if she realized the misery and hurt she was causing our daughters and me when her mind was more often than not occupied with thoughts of her lover and not getting caught. At the risk of damaging her friendship with Sarah, I asked her the following. Sarah, but aren't you neglecting your husband? Surely he must be getting a lot less attention from you because of your affair. She didn't reply immediately, and there was a long pause before she wrote her answer. Could it be, I thought, that my wife had never considered the impact of her cheating on me? Lena, well, we still make love. It's not as often as it used to be, but I don't believe it really matters to him. He does love me a lot. After all, I can't let him be intimate with me when I'm still, well, after being with Victor. If I did, he would certainly find out what's going on. Sarah, but aren't you afraid he will start looking somewhere else for the attention he's not getting at home? Lena, I've never thought about it that way. But now that you mention it, do you think it could happen? You've just given me something to worry about now, Sarah. Sarah, well, it wasn't my intention to scare you, but still, you should think about it. We went on to talk about other matters for a while. Then, before leaving, my wife told Sarah that in a few weeks, she and Victor were going to Denver again for 2 days, and she was all excited about it. I was shocked because she hadn't even talked to me about this trip yet. When we went to bed that evening, we both had difficulties falling asleep. I didn't try to initiate anything with my wife that evening, and for her part, she also didn't encourage me to do so. It took me a very long time before I finally fell asleep. Next to me, I could tell Lena was also having the same problem. While lying next to her in our bed, I finally made up my mind that I was going to talk to her the next day. Since it was going to be Saturday, I was going to make a final effort to try and save our marriage. We were sitting at the kitchen table when I brought up the matter to her the following morning. Lena, have you noticed that for the last few months our love life has been going downhill? We used to be intimate 2 or 3 times a week, and now we don't even do it once a week. It's been almost 2 weeks now that we haven't made love. Is something wrong? Are you cheating on me? She just stopped chewing on her omelet and looked at me. I could see she was shocked by what I had just said. She wasn't expecting this from me. After all, never once in our 10 years of marriage had I ever said anything like this to her. You have a lot of nerve, Mark, to talk to me like that, she snapped. My wife always called me Mark at home. She would use the name Benjamin only when she wasn't happy with me or when she wanted to make a point. I could tell by her look now that she was very angry with me. How could you doubt me after all these years that we've been together? I work hard both at home and at the office, and after all those years together, it's only natural that our love life would cool down a little. I don't think it's fair of you to even think this. I'm not accusing you. It's just that in the last year you've changed a lot, Lena. Even the presence of our daughters around you in the house seems to bother you. Have you noticed that they seldom seek your attention now? They come to me every time they have a problem. I could tell I had hit a sensitive nerve as she looked at me with even more anger in her expression. It occurred to me then that it was hopeless to try talking to her about our problem. There are only 24 hours in a day, and I don't have time to deal with those 2 brats all the time. It's only natural that you should help me. It was evident to me, judging by the way her expression suddenly changed, that she had said these words without thinking. Calling her daughters brats was something a loving mother should never do. She must have realized this a few seconds later, but the words had left her mouth, and she couldn't take them back now. The expression on her face gradually changed from one of anger to one of pain, and all of a sudden, she got up and ran to her room. Yes, it was clear to me that it was completely hopeless to try talking to her. As many women do in these circumstances, they simply use a crying fit as an excuse to get out of a discussion they aren't winning. Therefore, I just dropped the matter for the moment. Saturday afternoon, Lena went shopping as she usually did each Saturday. I knew she probably went looking for a new outfit to wear for her upcoming trip with Victor to Denver. While she was gone, and since the children were busy playing in their room, I began searching for her birth control pills in our bedroom. After 15 minutes, I found them in her walk-in closet, just as she had told Sarah. They were hidden inside a shoebox along with a pair of shoes. The pills were neatly set in a plastic rectangular dispenser. Inside the box, along with the already open dispenser, were 2 other sealed ones. She had mentioned that she had been taking them for a full year now. This meant that she must have started taking them right at the beginning of her affair with Victor. She certainly didn't want to get pregnant since she knew I had had a vasectomy. If she did, there would be no way for her to explain her pregnancy except to admit she was cheating on me. I felt a surge of sadness and anger. I even felt a little pity for her at that moment. How could she be so cruel to her family? In my eyes, at that moment, she no longer was the wonderful wife I had married 10 years ago. Where was the woman I loved so much and who, in turn, cared for me more than she cared for herself? What had happened to her? I wanted my wife back, but I knew she was lost to me forever. I thought about my daughters while I still held the already open pill dispenser in my hand. What was going to happen to our family? It was now plain to me that my marriage was over. At the same time, I also knew that I would never leave my 2 daughters in her care. I began to cry for long minutes as I sat on top of our bed, still holding the open dispenser in my hand. Then despair replaced sadness in my heart. In turn, this was accompanied by a strong urge to seek revenge against her and her lover. Slowly, as I sat on top of our bed with my eyes still red and in tears, a plan began to develop in my mind. It was an evil plan. It wasn't something a compassionate man would do to his wife, but there was no more room for compassion and forgiveness in my heart. Vengeance and hatred had taken over most of my emotions now. After examining the pills in the dispenser, I carefully pulled one out. I next took my 2 daughters to my mother's house, and I went to the drugstore. It took me half an hour to examine all the different bottles of pills on the shelves so as to find exactly what I wanted. I finally picked 2 different bottles that contained pills that were white and round and very similar in size to the pills in my wife's dispenser. Only then, once I had both bottles in my hand, did I read the labels on the bottles. On one bottle, it said that the pills were for liver pains, while the other contained aspirin for babies. I bought both bottles. Once home, I opened both bottles and, taking a pill from each, I carefully compared them with the pill I already had from my wife's dispenser. The aspirin pill was just the right size to fit in one of the small holes of the dispenser, even though it was just a bit thicker. I then got myself busy replacing all the remaining pills from the open dispenser with aspirin pills. Next, I placed the dispensers back into the shoebox. I then went to pick up my daughters from my mom's house. When my wife arrived home later, I just hoped that neither of my daughters would mention that they had spent an hour at my mom's house. In any case, I already had prepared an excuse for bringing them there. So life went on, and on Wednesday of the following week, Lena told me that she was going to attend another convention in Denver for 2 days and 2 nights. When I asked her who was going with her, she simply said it would be as usual one of the secretaries from work was going with her. She didn't tell me which one, of course. While she was in Denver, she didn't bother to call home once. Even so, our 2 daughters didn't seem to miss her while she was there, even though I did. The second day after she left, I called from a public phone at the firm where she worked and asked to speak to Adam Stone. I was told that he was out of town and wouldn't be back until the following week. I certainly knew where he was. He was busy playing the married man with my wife. When Lena came back from Denver, she hugged me as soon as she walked into the house. Later, when our daughters were in bed in the evening, she took me by the hand and led me to our bedroom. We were intimate for almost 2 hours that evening. I suppose she felt guilty for not calling home once during those 2 days and thought she could make it up to me by being affectionate. Or was it that she felt some remorse for what she had done with Victor? Or could it be that she was sorry for what she had said to me about our daughters before leaving and was trying to make up for it by being close to me? Yes, she was trying to win me back by granting me the privilege of her affection. For the last couple of months, she no longer considered my use of her body as my marital right, and every time we were intimate, she was doing me a favor by allowing me to be with her. In the last few months, her lover had now gained the exclusive right to her body. For the past year, he had gradually pushed me aside in the mind of my wife. She probably didn't realize yet that she had gone so far, but judging by the way she had been treating me, I knew I was second to Victor now. Of course, I greatly enjoyed being close to her that night when she got back home to me. It was like a wonderful breath of fresh air entering into my starving lungs. Yes, intimacy with Lena had always been great. After all, I still loved her, but I still planned to get my pound of flesh from her. Lena and Sarah continued to chat about twice a week, and while chatting with her, I told her that I had started seeing Ethan again. I even went into intimate details of our encounters the first time we got back together. I wanted to find out exactly what she had done with Victor and what she was still doing when she was with him. What better way to learn about her activities in bed than to describe what I was doing with my fictitious lover? Gradually, I learned that my wife did things with her lover that she had never allowed me to do with her. I felt devastated. It pained me terribly when she wrote these words to Sarah. She was still my wife, and I recalled her once telling Sarah that she loved me more than life itself. How could she love me and do the things she did? What was wrong with her? I kept asking myself. She certainly wasn't acting like she still loved me. She was slowly killing me with neglect and indifference. How could she still claim to love me? After I made the changes to the pills, I often checked the shoebox again to see if she was still taking them. I noticed that each day there was 1 pill less in the dispenser. As soon as the dispenser was empty, she opened another one, and I made the changes to the pills again. After the first day, 2 more weeks went by, and I began to notice that she was starting to pay more attention to me and our daughters. She no longer had that empty look in her eyes. She was even laughing and smiling more often when she was home. Then one day, about 2 weeks after she got back from Denver, she came in from work one late afternoon, and I could tell she had a problem. Something was bothering her, and it was easy to see. When I asked her what was wrong, she just started crying and ran to her room. Even though I had a good idea what her problem was, it was confirmed to me when I checked her pills the next day. She hadn't taken them for the last 2 days. She was pregnant, and she now knew it, which explained why she was no longer taking her daily pill. As soon as I had a chance, I replaced the remaining aspirin in the dispenser with the original birth control pills that I kept in a drawer in my office for that purpose. I did this just in case she brought the pills back to the pharmacy to complain about the fact that they hadn't done what they were supposed to do. The ball was beginning to roll now, and I knew that very soon, everything was going to hit the fan. It wouldn't be long before my wife realized that her cheating on me for the last 13 months was going to cost her much pain and suffering, pain that certainly wasn't worth the hours of pleasure she had experienced in the arms of her lover. Even though I had tried a few times to get her to tell me what was bothering her, she refused to open up to me and talk about her affair and her pregnancy. Had she admitted everything to me at that moment, I still would have divorced her, and I still would have insisted that she have nothing to do with raising our 2 daughters in the future. But at least my need for revenge against her would have ended there. No, she had to keep lying to me and continue to take me for a fool, even with a baby that wasn't mine growing inside her belly. I wasn't quite ready to let the cat out of the bag yet and tell her that I knew all about her cheating and her pregnancy. I wanted more proof of her affair since it was my intention to sue the firm where she worked for breaking up my marriage. Lena hadn't chatted with her friend Sarah for a couple of weeks since the day before she had gone to Denver, and I was anxious to know if she was going to tell her about her pregnancy. So as soon as I saw her sit in front of her computer one evening after the children were in bed, I ran to the basement and logged in to chat with her. She talked about her trip to Denver, and she even bragged to Sarah how much she had enjoyed the 2 nights she had spent with Victor. She even told her that they had been together half the night while they were there. On a sudden impulse, Sarah asked her if she was ready to leave her husband to be with Victor, but my wife surprised me again by telling her that she would never leave me since she loved me. She wrote that when she was with Victor, it was only physical, and she certainly didn't love him. But what stunned me the most was when she added that she was now looking forward to ending her affair with him and getting back to being my loving wife again. But she never told her that she was pregnant. I had a big surprise for her if she expected to return to the way things were before she began cheating on me for well over a year. She had been with that man and giving him all the affection he wanted, while at the same time, she was more often than not refusing herself to me. In other words, she was giving freely to Victor what rightfully belonged to me. Wednesday evening, she finally told Sarah that she was pregnant with Victor's child. She and Victor were planning to go to a private clinic together so she could have an abortion. She explained to Sarah that in 2 weeks' time, on Wednesday the 19th, she had an appointment at a clinic in Springfield. It was a small town where the clinic was situated, and she and Victor were going to spend a few days there so she could recover after the abortion. Of course, I printed everything so I could use it against her. Springfield was about an hour's drive from our house, and the following day, I took a few hours off work and drove there. Identifying myself as Lena's husband, I checked with the registration to see if they could confirm the reservation for Lena's abortion on the 19th, and they did. I asked for a written confirmation with the clinic stamp on it, and at the same time, I was able to get the name of the doctor who would be performing the abortion. He was Dr. Stephen Miller. A week later, while we were all sitting at the table, Lena announced to me that once again, she had to attend an important convention in Denver. She was going to be gone 2 nights once again, but she also added that this was the last time she was ever going to attend a work-related convention or meeting. I was not impressed since I knew the truth about her trip, and she was kind of taken by surprise by my lack of enthusiasm about this being her last trip. I already knew that things were cooling off between her and her lover, and that was probably why she no longer planned to attend any convention in the future. But it was now much too late for me to ever consider forgiving her. I took the day off work on Wednesday the 19th, and early in the morning, Lena kissed me before leaving the house. She then drove to the airport in her Ford. I knew from her chatting that she only intended to park her car there. She was going to ride with Victor in his car to Springfield. As soon as she was gone, I got into my car and drove to Springfield. I parked in front of the clinic in such a way that I had a clear view of the main entrance, and I waited. About an hour later, with my digital camera in hand, I took pictures of her and Victor entering the clinic. I had no trouble getting both of their faces clearly in a couple of pictures. As soon as they were inside, I drove away since I didn't want them to see me. On the 21st, around 4 p.m., I was home since, unknown to Lena. I had taken 2 weeks vacation from work. Lena walked into the house carrying an overnight bag and a small suitcase. She looked pale and stressed, and she was surprised to see me already home so early. Everything was now ready. The same day Lena left for Springfield, I went to see my lawyer, and later, we both drove to the firm where Lena worked. I was able to talk to Ethan Hayes, the president of the firm. I explained to him everything that had been going on between my wife and Adam Stone. I even told him that Victor had impregnated my wife, and at that very moment, they were both at a clinic in Springfield so she could get an abortion. I also told him that I was divorcing her and suing Victor as well as the firm. Victor for alienation of affection and the firm for not enforcing the code of boss-employee relationships. I also told him I was willing to fight in court if necessary since I had all the proof I needed to win. I even had photos of Victor and my wife entering the clinic together. We all knew that the bad publicity against the firm would be devastating, and he asked me to hold things for a day so he could talk with his associates on the matter. I know that he got his lawyers involved, and they did ask many questions to the other secretaries, and he also called the clinic in Springfield to confirm what I had told him. The following day, after much argument, we agreed that I would receive $450,000 in damages if I were to drop all charges against the firm. Of course, Adam Stone was going to be fired, and so was my wife. Then, on second thought, since I didn't want to have to support her while she was out of work, and also because she was the mother of my daughters and I didn't want her to fall on welfare, I finally demanded that the firm continue to pay her salary for a full year, and that they also cover all the counseling and health care she was going to need for the next 5 years. It was finally agreed, and my lawyer had a long discussion with their lawyers, and they prepared the documents, which I signed. Then a check was given to my lawyer. It was post-dated until my divorce was finalized since I didn't want my wife to be eligible for any of that money. I was all ready to face Lena now. I even had my lawyer prepare the divorce papers and a restraining order so that she would have to stay away from the house and from my daughters until our divorce was settled. In a letter that I placed in the envelope with the divorce documents, I explained to her that if she didn't agree with my conditions of divorce, I would fight her in court. I would then ask for full custody of our daughters, and she would never see them again. When Lena got back home the following day, everything was ready, and since it was now Wednesday, I knew she wasn't going to learn about the divorce or that she had lost her job until Monday morning. As soon as she entered the house, I was waiting for her in the living room. She was surprised to see me home so early in the afternoon. "Mark, why are you home so early? And why didn't you go pick up the girls before coming home?" "I took the day off, and our daughters are still with my mother. I have something important to discuss with you. This is why I didn't get them yet." "What could be so important that warranted you taking a day off?" "Well, it all began a few weeks ago when I was changing the light bulb in the walk-in closet in our room. I had to move a few things to get the footstool under the fixture, and when I did, a box fell open, and this is what I found inside. I went to the couch and took the shoebox with the shoes and the 2 remaining pill dispensers still in the box. I then placed the whole box right in front of her on the living room table. Can you explain this?" The overnight bag that she still held in her right hand slipped from her hand to the floor, and her whole face turned ash white. For a few seconds, an expression of emptiness hit her emotions, but it didn't last long. Then all of a sudden, she half shouted in a voice full of panic, "Oh God! Oh God! No, this is not happening." All of a sudden, she had to sit on the arm of the couch. I could tell that her legs would no longer support her weight as her body began to sway back and forth as she sat there with her hands pressed to the side of her face. She was a sad sight to see. "Well, dear faithful wife," I continued, "how can you explain these pills? Why are you afraid of getting pregnant when you know I had a vasectomy just after our second daughter was born? Unless you've been with someone else behind my back? Mark, listen, Mark, I can explain everything. You're making this look so vile and so out of proportion. Just listen to me, please." I could now read the distress and fear all over her face. Her lips were trembling, and her hands were shaking as she looked at me with her tearful and pleading eyes, but I kept on accusing her of her infidelity. "You've been with someone else behind my back for who knows how long, and you say this affair you're having is not vile? You've been giving to another man what you've been refusing me, and now I suppose you think you can talk your way out of all that cheating? I don't love him, Mark, and it's over. I have always loved you, and only you. Please, Let's talk. I need you to listen to me. We must find a solution. Tears were freely flowing over her white blouse while her eyes were swollen and very red from the tremendous emotion and pressure she was under at that moment. How can you say you love me when you've been cheating on me for God knows how many months? You've broken your marriage vows, and you've betrayed me and our daughters. I will tell you everything. I hope you'll understand, Mark. It's something that just happened, and there has never been any love between us. Yes, talk we must. You have a lot of explaining to do, dear wife. First, let's talk about your recent trip to Denver. Or should I say Springfield? Had I hit her with my right fist between the eyes, I don't think she would have been more surprised. She just looked at me with her mouth open and her eyes wide with horror. She did try to say something, but nothing coherent came out of her mouth. Yes, Lena, I know all about Springfield and why you went there. Would you like to enlighten me in case there is something I don't understand? All of a sudden, she got up and ran to her room, crying. For long minutes, I just stood there debating in my mind whether I should go and check on her. I was worried that she might take pills and end it all, but I couldn't bring myself to check on her. She didn't come out of her room for the next 2 hours, but later I did hear her take a shower after she had been crying for a long time. When she came out of her room wearing just her long gown, she looked terrible. Her eyes were still red and swollen, and her face was the image of pain itself. She slowly went to sit in front of me at the kitchen table, and even though she didn't look at me straight in the face, she asked me, "Mark, what are you going to do? I don't want to lose you, and I will do anything to make amends to you. I think you're a little late for that now. Do you remember all those long months when I tried to be nice to you, when I was longing to be with you? I would have licked your feet if you had asked me, but no, you were saving yourself for your lover and giving him what was rightfully mine. You've been slowly killing the love I had for you, Lena. There is very little left now." Again, she went into a fit of crying with her head resting on her folded arms on top of the table. "Forgive me, Mark. Oh, please, say you still love me. I beg you." At that moment, I was tempted to reach for her and hold her in my arms. I still did love her as much as I did when we were married, but I knew it would be a mistake to admit this to her. In a calm voice, I told her that she had to tell me everything who her lover was, how she had met him, and the things they had done together. She finally confessed everything to me. I don't think she lied since everything she said seemed to confirm what I already knew. She also confessed to her abortion in Springfield. She also said that she had been with Victor a couple of times a week, sometimes in his office and once a week in the afternoon in a motel room. We didn't talk much during the rest of the weekend, and early on Monday morning, as soon as she got to her office, she was served with the divorce papers. A few minutes later, the president of the firm told her that she and Victor were out of a job. Since I had a restraining order against her, she could no longer come home, but she did call me Monday at noon. She was devastated. Before hanging up on her, I told her that I was going to send her clothing to her mother's house, and that she no longer had any business coming home, and that all the locks on the house had been changed. I heard later that after I hung up on her that day, they had to take her to the hospital since she collapsed. As soon as I hung up, she was at her mother's house when she called me, and her mom had to call an ambulance to get her to the hospital. 2 weeks later, she signed the divorce papers and accepted all of my conditions. I agreed to let her see our daughters at my mother's place for a couple of hours each Saturday. 6 months later, I was free of her. I was no longer married to her officially. I heard from her mother that she was still very depressed and in therapy. She had lost a lot of weight, and she never went out of the house since she no longer worked. Gradually, I let her see our daughters more often and without supervision. I even allowed her to take them to her mother's house for a weekend. As time went on, I could tell that our daughters were getting more attached to their mother, and I knew this was going to be a problem sooner or later. A year after the divorce, my mother was diagnosed with cancer, and she could no longer take care of my daughters while I worked. Lena called me one day and made me an offer. "Listen, Mark, I know that your mother can no longer take care of our daughters while you work, and I would be willing to assume that role if you want." Lena, I don't know what to say. Do you think it would be a good idea? For one thing, your parents live almost 30 miles from here, and the trip back and forth each day would be too much for the children. Besides, I don't want to give our daughters any false hope of us getting back together. I knew saying that was a blow to her, but she didn't seem to react to what I had just said. I rejected her offer and didn't allow her to continue. I knew that I couldn't take care of my daughters, and I didn't have a lot of money to hire a nanny for them. A few weeks later, I got an offer from Lena's last company. We had an out-of-court settlement against my lawsuit, and the money was enough for me to hire a nanny for them. 1 year down the line, I was dating a very nice woman, Olivia. She was a widow and didn't have any kids. Both my daughters love her and have accepted her role as their mother. It took time, but I removed Lena from my life. I only meet her when she comes to visit our daughters. A lot of people have been there at some point in their lives. They make a small change in their plans, and within a few days, their lives are turned upside down. We don't realize the consequences when these decisions are made, but later we come to understand their significance. In my case, it was deciding to look up an old school friend. I was about to go on one of my rare trips for my employer to Springfield. I mentioned in the pub one night that I had to spend the following week in Springfield. Springfield is probably a nice town if you know it, but being dropped into these places unexpectedly can take a week to find out where the decent nightlife is, by which time I'd be long gone. John, one of my longtime friends from way back when we were at school, told me another of our old school crowd, Michael White, was living in Springfield and suggested I look him and his wife, Olivia, up. Now, Olivia was a name that brought back some really happy memories for me. Olivia Adams, as she was back then. I definitely remembered her from school, the girl who was most likely to, or more like the girl who definitely would. I think she took most of the guys' cherries, but unfortunately, not mine. I was an early starter in that game and had more than a few enjoyable afternoons in Olivia's company when we bunked off school together. Poor old Michael had drawn the short straw on that one. He got Olivia in the club, and let's be honest here, Michael was the poor guy who had taken the fall for it. He finished up doing the manly thing and marrying our Olivia. Yep, that's what men did in those days. You stood by your responsibilities. Still, from what I'd heard, they were very happy together, and Olivia's wandering ways were all in the distant past. John, who had kept in touch with Michael and Olivia, said they had at least 3 children, which wasn't surprising to me knowing Olivia's love of family life. Well, I don't think she was ever that keen on the idea of actually having kids, but she sure did like the preliminaries. Apparently, they moved up to Springfield shortly after they got married when Michael had been offered a good job up there. That is probably why I didn't remember seeing them for years. What harm could it do to meet up with a couple of old school friends, I thought. No, I wasn't thinking I might get lucky with Olivia again. I was a happily married man. So, a week or so before I left for my trip, I gave them a call to let them know I was coming. It was then that I made what was to prove to be an eye-opening but ultimately disastrous decision. Michael and Olivia insisted that I stay with them whilst I was in town, and I acquiesced. On my arrival at their house, I realized I had made a mistake. Both the once gorgeous Olivia and Michael had turned into a couple of real barrels, about as wide as they were tall. Yeah, they were pleasant enough, but they were so damned boring. Christ, their life seemed to revolve around their kids, the church, and bloody bingo. Mind, Olivia was one great cook. I was damned glad I was only staying for 5 days as it was. I must have put on quite a few pounds that week. Anyway, we spent a few evenings talking about old times. I was surprised at the long list of guys that Olivia asked me if I knew what had happened to. I know that if I had been Michael, I would have gotten at least a little annoyed because I knew that most of the list were guys who had sampled Olivia's charms at one time or another, but Michael didn't appear to bat an eyelid. It was on the Thursday evening that my life started to turn. When Olivia wasn't asking me about what I knew about this guy or that, the pair of them spent most of the time telling me about their kids, of whom they were very proud. It was on that Thursday evening that the worst fate that can befall a house guest befell me. About 8 p.m., just after Olivia put the twins to bed, Michael got out the bloody projector and spent the whole evening showing me his old home movies of their kids. I think I was in that daze we all fall into after watching someone else's home movies for a few hours. I was acting my heart out, trying to at least look and sound vaguely interested, while Michael and Olivia told tales of holidays long past. Mind you, in some of the older films when Olivia still had her figure, she looked good in those tiny bikinis she wore back then. I quietly attacked the bottle of rum I had purchased that day to dull the senses. But then it happened. A scene came on the screen that made me sit up and take notice. Michael and Olivia both noticed my sudden interest as I nearly jumped out of my seat. What's up, Alex? Olivia asked. Have you seen someone you recognize? I bleeding well sure had. Michael, can you run the film back a bit? I asked in a panic-struck voice. Michael stopped the film and then ran it back until I asked him to stop. Exactly when did you say this film was taken? I inquired. 11 years ago in Seaside, Michael replied. Why, do you recognize someone? Yeah, that couple in the background. The woman with the blonde hair looks pretty familiar. One hell of an understatement. That woman was Sophia, my bloody wife. But I wasn't about to tell Michael and Olivia that. Oh, those two, Olivia commented. They were a really nice couple. Americans, weren't they, Michael? Well, at least I think he was. She didn't say very much to anyone, did she, Michael? They were a real love-struck pair, hanging all over each other all the time. Hey, Michael, aren't there some more shots of them at the party night? Now that did get interesting. As usual, Olivia didn't give Michael a chance to get a word in edgeways. I had gathered that that was how conversations with these two normally went. Michael ran the film on for a few minutes. The picture changed from the hotel's swimming pool area to what was obviously the ballroom. The same couple appeared in the background again, only this time they were dancing, but slowly the film began to concentrate more on them as they got a little, well, putting it politely, amorous on the dance floor. I was by then having a little trouble breathing. It ain't every day you see folks behaving like that in a seaside hotel, Michael laughingly commented. I just had to get it on film. He's a real pervert sometimes, Olivia cut in. You wait until we get to the videos Michael took out in Spain. You've never seen so many tiny bikinis in your life. I think Michael paid the kids to stand near the girls wearing the smallest ones, just so he would have an excuse to film them. I'm afraid I wasn't really listening to Olivia as I watched my wife doing just about everything, except have sex with the guy on the dance floor. His hands were everywhere they shouldn't be in a public place. I thought back. Michael had said that this particular film had been taken about 11 years before. It was 15 years ago that my company had sent me out to Brazil where they were setting up a new manufacturing plant. I had been away for nearly 7 weeks that summer, and during that time, Sophia's parents had taken the children away with them on holiday for a fortnight. I remembered that there were a few days when the home phone was apparently out of order. Sophia was forced to call me in Mumbai from a public phone because I couldn't get through to her at the house. Alex, are you all right? Olivia said. You've gone a funny color. That woman. Can you remember her name? I asked. No, sorry, I can't. Can you remember, Michael? You spoke to them a few times. I think his name was Clayton, or something like that. No, hang on, it was Brian, you know, like Luke Eastwood. But I don't recall what her name was. Funny that, what with them being just married and everything. I don't recall him ever mentioning her name. I never spoke to them when she was around. They were too busy if you get the idea. You know what it's like, they were obviously just married and on their honeymoon. One sexy little woman, isn't she? I bet she nearly killed him in bed at night. She really did get turned on. To be honest, it was getting a bit embarrassing until the hotel manager asked them to cool it down a little. It was no good. I had to tell them. Sexy she sure is, but there's the problem. She's my bloody wife. Oh, Michael said. Oh, bugger. It can't be, Olivia exclaimed. Michael and Olivia used different expletives. Neither Michael nor Olivia had ever met Sophia. I had lost track of them once they got married, and that had been well before I met up with Sophia. Sorry, Michael, but I'm going to have to ask you for a copy of that film. They both realized the implication, and I think they were a little lost as to what to say to me. Oh damn, I am sorry, Alex. Of course, they'll run you off a copy on a CD. I had them transferred to the computer last year. Personally, we think the atmosphere is better when you see them on the big screen, but I suspect before long, everything will be on CDs or these new DVD things they're bringing out. Well, that was all there was to it. Michael ran me off a copy. I didn't sleep well that night, and I left for home as soon as I finished work on Sunday evening. I had planned to travel home on Saturday, but I wasn't in any mood to sleep that night. I arrived home at some unearthly hour on Saturday morning after a long, slow drive back down to the East Coast. My nerves were completely shot. I had no intention of killing myself on the way, so I crashed out on the sofa. Some hours later, I was awakened by the sound of Sophia's voice. Alex, you scared the life out of me. I didn't expect to find you lying there. When did you get home? Why didn't you call last night? And what are you doing sleeping on the sofa? Sophia demanded when she discovered me lying there in the morning. It must have been about 2:30, I replied, ignoring her other questions. Why didn't you come up to bed? I've missed having you to cuddle up to. I couldn't see much point in beating around the bush as inside. I was hopping mad and only just managing to keep my temper under control, so I dived straight in. Is that a fact? Are you sure you haven't got anyone else you'd rather cuddle up to? That took Sophia completely by surprise, but I figured I had some more surprises in store for her. What the hell is that supposed to mean? She demanded. Just what I said. Haven't you got some stud or other that you'd rather be with? Are you feeling all right? You're not making any sense. I could see that Sophia was beginning to get more than a little annoyed with me, but she could never be as angry as I was with her. I slowly got off the sofa and walked over to our home computer that I had turned on when ID arrived. At a touch on the mouse, the monitor flashed back into life. Sophia, remember when my firm sent me to Brazil all those years ago to help set up that new factory out there? Yes, you were gone over 6 weeks. They promised that would be the last time they would send you abroad. And whilst I was gone, your parents took the children away on a holiday for a couple of weeks, didn't they? Yes, but why bring that up now? What did you do whilst they were away, Sophia? I've got to admit she was good. There wasn't any sign that I could discern that she had anything to hide. Nothing much, really, except I redecorated Daniel's bedroom. You didn't go off yourself for a couple of days? Of course not. Why do you ask? What's this third degree all about? I clicked the start button on the media player. Sophia looked at the computer screen with a blank expression on her face. Tell me, Sophia, who's that guy you're sitting with by that swimming pool? What I can only call a look of surprise and curiosity came on Sophia's face that then changed to what I took to be a look of bewilderment as she realized what she was watching. What the hell is that? Where did you get it? That isn't me. After that, we watched in silence until the film switched to the ballroom. It could be that the first little seeds of doubt were planted in my mind at this time. Her reaction was perfect for someone who hadn't the foggiest idea what was going on, but I had to take into account that Sophia has always been a very good actress. Hey, she was a member of the local dramatic society after all, so I took her reaction with a pinch of salt. Well, that sure looks like you to me. Sophia's face turned bright red as she watched the behavior of the two of them on the dance floor. God, Alex, I could never behave like that in public. Well, if it isn't you, who the hell is it? Sophia was staring closely at the screen now. I haven't got the faintest idea, but it certainly isn't me. She does look like me, I'll give you that, but I can promise you it definitely isn't me. So, you've got a twin out there that you didn't know about? It appears I must have, Alex, but I swear to you that isn't me. Well, it must be, and it definitely is. An argument went on for the next half hour or so until our son Daniel surfaced for the day. Then Sophia and I held our peace for the rest of the morning until he went out to meet his girlfriend. Alex, you've got to believe me, that isn't me on that film, Sophia said the moment the door closed. I've been thinking. Helen next door will tell you that I wasn't away from the house for more than a couple of hours at a time all the time you were in Brazil. You know that I would have had to ask her to come in and feed the cats if I'd gone away for even one night. Having said that, Sophia turned and went out of the back door. I sat in the kitchen trying to work out whether I was wrong in my first assumption that it had been Sophia in Seaside with that guy. Sophia returned about 10 minutes later with Helen in tow. Tell him, Helen. Tell Alex that I was home all the time he was away in Brazil. That's right, Alex. I saw Sophia every day while you were out in Brazil. It was a long time ago, but if you remember, Sophia and I used to have coffee together every morning back then. We did every morning until Sophia started back to work again, Helen added. Well, really, that was the end of the discussion on the subject. I had Sophia swearing that the woman on the film wasn't her and Helen assuring me that Sophia hadn't been away from the house for more than a couple of hours at a time. I'm not sure now how much I really swallowed the story, but I had no reason that I could think of to suspect Helen would lie to me. Although I think I would have been more convinced if it hadn't taken Sophia 10 minutes to come back with Helen. 10 minutes is plenty of time for them to get the story worked out. That night, against my better judgment and with a lot of willpower on my part, Sophia and I made love. But as I lay awake in bed afterward, I found my mind wouldn't let me sleep. Things kept going around in my head. Helen was Sophia's best friend. Could I really trust her to tell me the truth? In the following weeks, I'm not sure what happened, really. My trust in Sophia had evaporated, and I found myself spying on my wife, searching her cupboards when she wasn't around, hunting out her old diaries, looking for something, anything, but I found nothing. If she was home from work just a little late, I was asking awkward questions. The closeness that I had always felt for her in the past had suddenly gone, just evaporated. I loved her, but in my heart, I felt I couldn't trust her. Things came to a head one day when I was going through my computer CDs looking for some old files. I suddenly realized the CD that Michael had given me wasn't there anymore. Sophia, have you seen that CD that Michael made for me? The one with the woman I thought was you on it? I put it through the shredder. What the hell made you do that? Because it was disgusting. It upset me having it in the house. Sophia's destroying of that CD got me thinking again. The woman certainly looked like Sophia, but there was a question I hadn't really asked myself: who was the man? To Sophia's horror, I had shown the video to a couple of our friends, and we'd had a good laugh over it, but they had all noted the remarkable resemblance the woman bore to Sophia. I'm afraid my anger or distrust got the better of me. Why was that, Sophia? I asked. Were you worried that if too many people saw that bit of film, in the end, somebody was bound to recognize the guy or have seen him around somewhere local? I don't know why I said that, but it was to turn out to be the question that brought our marriage to an end. Sophia went at me, and the row between us that followed was loud enough for the neighbors to get worried enough to call the police. Later that evening, after the police left, I packed up some of my things and moved out of the house. The following Monday morning found the two of us in our solicitor's office. Sophia apologized for losing her temper and asked me to return home, but I told her I couldn't see any way that we could put things back together. I was convinced that it was her and Michael's movie. The divorce went off surprisingly amicably. Really? I found myself a flat in town and would see Daniel several times most weeks. My daughter Grace was away at nursing college, and the oldest one, Isabella, was away at university, so it made little difference to them. I went to all Daniel's school events, probably more than I had done before the divorce. To start with, Sophia and I were extremely civil and polite to each other when we met, even if our meetings were a little strained. Sophia kept sending me little notes through Daniel, asking me to reconsider things. Grace, when she was home, kept telling me that her mother cried a lot. That didn't do much for my well-being, as I was, well, not exactly crying myself to sleep at night, but not far off it. If I'm honest, quite a lot of the time, I felt like a real heel. I know I was drinking far too much, and that resulted in my boss having a long, hard talk with me about it. So, I was forced to take stock and pull myself together a bit. I thought about taking the pledge. I didn't swear off drink completely, but I cut down a hell of a lot on my consumption. Then one evening, when I picked Daniel up from his after-school football practice, he told me that his mother had been out on a date with some guy the night before. The little notes had stopped a few weeks previous, so I figured that Sophia had resorted to trying to make me jealous. Why else would she tell Daniel she was out with another guy? I'm afraid it worked. I did get jealous, and that I couldn't stomach. So, I think more as a kind of retaliation than anything else, I tried the dating game myself. You know, it was just a reprisal thing. I'll be honest with you, my heart wasn't really in it. I had to persist, though, as I wasn't going to let Sophia get one up on me again. As time went on, Sophia and I were getting less tolerant of each other, and that led to all-out guerrilla war breaking out between us. Unfortunately, the kids were playing piggy in the middle in that little game. I was making sure they knew about the girls I was taking out, including quite a few fictitious ones, I'll add, and Sophia made sure they told me about every time she went out with a guy. What was even more frustrating for me was the fact that Sophia was being quite devious about things. Apparently, she never let her men friends come to the house to collect her. I figured that was because Daniel might recognize some of them if they were any of my friends, which I suspected some of them were. Of course, I asked all the single guys I knew, but they all denied taking Sophia out. Oh yeah, and I believed them. I'd seen the way they had looked at Sophia over the years. Anyway, in the process, I think I lost quite a few of them as friends. My problem was that I couldn't live with Sophia because I felt I couldn't trust her, but I still loved her and now found I was having extreme difficulty living without her. It was a year after the divorce, and I was in such a state that I had already been passed over for one promotion at work that should have been mine. In fact, I think I was really on my way out of my job completely. I know that the quality of my work had fallen off a lot. My boss called me into her office one day and asked me if I would do a 6-month stint at our Birmingham office. Apparently, one of the managers up there was going on maternity leave, and they wanted me to run her department while she was away. Now, this wasn't really an offer. It was as near to an order as you can get. It was made clear to me that if I didn't take the placement, I would probably find I was out of a job before too long. If I took the placement, I think my boss thought I would have to either get my act together or get myself fired by the Birmingham office. Whichever happened, it took the problem of me off her hands. I can't blame her. She had been very tolerant of my shortcomings for some time. The children weren't happy when I told them I would be living away for at least 6 months. Surprisingly, Sophia called me up and asked what was going on. I told her I would be back every couple of weeks to see the children, and she seemed satisfied with that. Birmingham wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. I lived in a nice hotel just a few hundred yards from the office. The staff was good and accepted me as the boss without any problems. I got on very well with a few of them, mainly my number 2, Betty. Matilda was supposed to be almost at retiring age, to be honest. I suspected she was older than that. A widow, she apparently lived for her work. She was actually the obvious candidate for doing the job I'd been called up there to do, but she told me she had turned it down as she felt she was too old to take on the responsibility. And then there was Maya Singh. Maya, as everyone usually called her, was about my age, maybe 5 or so years younger, and obviously of Eurasian parentage. I found that I enjoyed Maya's company a lot. She was the complete opposite of Sophia in looks. They were of similar build, but whereas Sophia was blonde and very fair-skinned, Maya had black hair and quite a dark complexion. At first, she came over as a very shy person until she got to know you. That is, then she appeared extremely forward and was always joking around. Over time, I gathered she had had quite a difficult life, not quite knowing whether she was British or Indian. Apparently, her mother had died when she was quite young, and she had been brought up by her father's sisters, who were very Indian in their outlook. Maya had gone to English schools and appeared to have a very British outlook on how a young woman should behave. I was to learn that she had been married a couple of times. Firstly, when she was quite young, only a teenager really, and at her father's insistence. I also gathered it was against her own better judgment. A marriage arranged by her father's family that had turned out to be a complete disaster and ended very quickly when her husband tried, to beat her for some reason or the other. As I understand it, Maya put him in hospital and promptly divorced him. After her divorce, Maya found herself estranged from her family. Apparently, it wasn't done for her to divorce a man the family had chosen for her. Then she somehow had gotten herself mixed up with some other guy. A complete loser. I have no idea what race the guy was, but apparently, he was a very unsuccessful gambler who rapidly turned into an alcoholic and, within 3 years of them getting married, had very quickly drunk himself to death. This led to Maya, once she had got to know me better, watching my alcohol consumption very carefully and being quite vocal about it on occasions. I told you that she spoke her mind, and she was not afraid to tick me off if she thought I was overdoing things. Somewhere along the line, after her second husband's death, Maya met up with Betty's son, who'd been in the army at the time. They must have been very into each other, but before they'd got around to tying the knot, he had been killed in Northern Ireland. Neither Betty nor Maya went into details about his death, but as a result, Maya was apparently living, or rather lodging, with Betty. Not seeing the children as much had the surprising result of me not thinking about Sophia as much either. Not that much of a surprise to me because when I did see the kids, their mother always seemed to be the main topic of conversation. Apparently, she wasn't dating anymore, or so I was told. Most likely run out of mugs, I thought. I think it was in the 5th month of my deployment in Brum that one morning I was called up to see the big chief at the office. He informed me that the manager I was standing in for had been in touch and told him that she was not intending to return to work after her child was born. He didn't enlarge on the reasons why he had other fish to fry. Then he went on to ask me whether I would take the position on permanently, for the time being at least, was the way he put it. I thought that was an odd way for him to phrase it. I was forced to tell him I was not sure whether I could at that moment because I still had problems in my private life. The move north had given me a lot of time to think about everything. I was definitely lonely up there, and I was beginning to doubt myself. I was thinking that I might have been a little hasty in my reactions to that damned film of Michael's. Sophia was still denying that it had been her at that seaside hotel. He looked at me for a while without speaking. I could see he was mulling something over in his mind. Okay, Alex, the bottom line, but please keep this to yourself for the time being. There's going to be some big changes around here in the next few months. We are relocating this office to Telford. There's not enough room to expand here as the company would like. The upper level of management have been informed of the move already, and a couple of them have made us aware of their intentions to retire early rather than move or commute to the new office. I've got my eye on you to replace one of them. I can offer you the job after you've gone back down south, but I would prefer it if you were on my team here to help with the move. I need to know who I can rely on. His statement took me by surprise, and I realized that the opportunity he was offering me wasn't to be sneezed at. But I also knew I'd been getting really melancholy about losing Sophia and the life we lived together. I needed time to think. Can you give me a week or so to think about this? I asked. Sure, if you like, Alex, but I definitely need to know one way or the other before the end of the month. That shouldn't be a problem. I hope we'll have things well and truly ironed out by then. I planned to talk to Sophia the next time I went down to see Daniel and the girls. I figured that if she wanted to try again, I was willing to give it a go. Great. Now, the next problem, the boss man said, opening a folder on his desk. I know this is going to sound funny, but who in your department do you feel is the best candidate to take over from you? The sooner I decide who's going to run what department after the move, the better. Well, there's only one person, really, and that's Maya. Betty has more experience and is the obvious choice, but you know she's thinking of retirement and doesn't want the responsibility. But I'm sure she'll stay long enough to help Maya out while she settles in if need be. The pair of them are very close, Dawn. We'll speak to both of them later today. The rest of the week was a very good one for our office as we closed on a couple of good contracts. Sunday evening, Betty, Maya, and some of the other staff, along with their spouses, joined me for dinner at my hotel. After the meal, we sat in the lounge and had a couple of drinks together. They have a band there on Sunday and Saturday evenings. So once the music started playing, some of us started dancing. Maya and I had a couple of dances together. It was around 10, and I was just coming off the dance floor with Betty when she announced that she was going home. To my utter surprise, Maya told Betty she would see her later, then grabbed my hand and dragged me back out onto the dance floor. And just what is this all about, young lady? I asked. You always go home with Betty. Not tonight, am not? I thought, and Betty agreed with me, that it might be a good idea if you and I spend a little time alone together. You'll notice that all the others have left while you were dancing with Betty. I think we thought that we should get to know each other a little better, if you're going to teach me how to do your job. Don't be silly, girl. You can do my job standing on your head. I know, but there aren't many guys who would recommend me for it. What with me being a woman and all. Now, I knew that wasn't exactly what Maya was really alluding to, as the previous incumbent of the position had also been female. We both knew that there still was an undercurrent of racial prejudice around the office, no matter how some folks tried to deny it, and folks of mixed race often have trouble being accepted within any racial group. Nonsense, Maya. You were ideal for that job. Thank you, Alex. Now, can we cut to the chase? Let's go to your room. Wow, hang on a minute. I didn't recommend you for that job just so I could get into your knickers. Do I look dumb? If I thought you had any ulterior motives in the first place, I wouldn't let you get within 100 yards of me. Anyway, I'm pretty sure that that kind of guy would have propositioned me well before he recommended me for the job. You do realize there's more than one girl in the office who would have jumped into bed with you for that recommendation, and some of them are married. No, that isn't the reason I'm suggesting we get together. When he told me about the job, the boss said there was a possibility that you might not be sticking around for very much longer. Now, I know that you like me, and I like you. I've been waiting for you to make a pass at me ever since you came up here, but you haven't, so I thought if I didn't get the ball rolling soon, I'd miss any chance I had. I'm flattered that you think that way, Maya, and I'll admit I find you very attractive, but I've got to tell you, I will most likely be trying for a reconciliation with my ex-wife when I go back down south next time. But I thought you divorced her because she cheated on you. I divorced her because I thought she had cheated on me, Maya. But as time goes on, I'm not so sure now. I only had a film that had been taken years ago showing a woman who looked very much like Sophia dancing with some guy in a hotel. I was damn sure it was Sophia at the time. But without any other evidence, the more that time passes, the more I'm thinking that I was most likely mistaken. She has always denied that it was her. Well, you know what they say, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Maya, I think you are a wonderful person. I really think I could fall in love with you very easily, but at the moment, I'm not really over Sophia. Can I ask if things don't work out between us? May I give you a call? They'll be waiting. Thanks. Now, I think I'd better call you a cab before we get ourselves into something that we could both finish up regretting. You don't have to, you know. Phil, Betty's son. And I waited, and what happened? Some bloody nutcase with a bomb blew him to smithereens. Can't we just spend one night together? I won't say I'm not sorely tempted, Maya, because I am, but I really don't think that would be fair on you in the circumstances. Now, come along, let's get reception to call you a cab. I escorted Maya to her cab, but before she got in, she threw her arms around my neck and kissed me. Just to give you some idea of what you're passing up, she said, grinding her body against mine. I carefully but gently pushed her away and helped her get into the car. Maya, don't kid yourself. I know exactly what I'm passing up, and I'll probably be kicking myself all night for doing so, but until I can make a commitment to you, I can't let myself take advantage of you, I said to her through the cab's open window. As she pulled away, the taxi driver gave me a look that told me he thought I'd lost my bloody mind. Maya is one sexy-looking lady. It was the following Sunday evening. It had become my habit to have a drink in the hotel's bar after dinner. I didn't keep any alcohol in my room, as that, I thought, would be tempting fate when I was feeling melancholy. I still wasn't the happiest guy in the world, and Maya's story about her second husband did play on my mind a bit. I was on a stool at the end of the bar when I spotted him coming into the lounge. There was no doubt about it in my mind about who he was the moment I saw him. He was the guy who had been in that film that Michael had taken. Seemingly without a care in the world, he casually looked around as if familiarizing himself with the layout of the almost empty lounge. Then he sauntered over and quite deliberately sat on the empty stool next to the one I was on. For a couple of minutes, I debated in my mind as to just what I was going to do next. Yeah, I did feel like punching the guy on the nose because seeing him in the flesh brought back the anger I'd felt when I first saw that film. But what the hell would that achieve besides getting me nicked for assault? I wouldn't even have the satisfaction of him knowing why I hit him until we got into court, so I just ignored him for the time being. Nice weather we're having at the moment, he commented to no one in particular. Well, it must have been meant for me, as there wasn't anyone else within earshot. Not bad for the time of year, I replied. I don't like it too hot myself. Anyway, American, Michael had said. For some reason, I thought it more likely he was Canadian. I'm not sure why, just a gut feeling, and I guessed he must have lived in England for some time, as the weather is often the subject used to break the ice among strangers. You a commercial traveler? He asked casually. No, I'm on secondment to one of my company's branch offices just down the road. Brian. Hey, you have me at a disadvantage. Have we met before? I don't think so, but I believe that is your name. Yeah, it sure is, but most folks call me Luke. Oh, is that what Sophia calls you? Who? Sophia, did you say? I'm sorry, but I don't think I can place anyone called Sophia. Oh, she will be disappointed. I really didn't expect him to have any idea as to what I was talking about, as theoretically, he wouldn't know me from Adam unless Sophia had shown him a picture of me, and that I somehow doubted. Where would I have met her? In Seaside, about 11 years ago. Yikes, that's going back a bit, but the only time I've ever been in Seaside was when I was on my honeymoon. I'm afraid I was concentrating on my new wife at the time, and I don't think I noticed any other women on that trip. Perhaps Emma, my wife, will remember her. She should be down in a minute. We can ask her. I don't know why, but I suddenly felt very unsure of myself. You were in Seaside with your wife? With my bride. We had planned on going to the Caribbean for our honeymoon, but there had been some trouble on the island we'd booked to go to, so at the last minute, we settled for Seaside. It was quite pleasant, but a bit on the straight-laced side for Emma and my liking. We only stayed a couple of nights and then moved on to Southampton, a little less pompous and a lot more nightlife. He must have spotted her come into the lounge in the mirror behind the bar because he swung around on his stool to face the entrance. Hi, babe, what took you so long? For a minute there, I thought you had dumped me. I looked over my shoulder and then almost fell off my stool at the sight before me. Walking towards us was Sophia. But no, it wasn't Sophia if you understand me. At first glance, it was Sophia, but there were subtle differences that told me it wasn't Sophia. Holy Mother of God. Was this the woman who had been in Michael's film? I can remember thinking, and then everything seemed to go black. Hey, fellow, are you all right? I could hear Brian asking as I was coming back to my senses. I was lying on the floor with a cushion under my head. A very worried-looking Brian was leaning over me, and I could see his wife, Emma, crouched down on the other side of me. Sorry, but I just had a bit of a shock when I saw your wife, I said to them. Hey, Luke keeps telling me that I'm drop-dead gorgeous, but that's the first time I've ever had that effect on a man, Emma cracked. For a minute, her accent had confused me. Then I realized there was that high-pitched Australian twang to her voice. Brian helped me to get up, and we moved into some of the lounge armchairs. Do you do that often? Are you ill or something? Brian asked. No, quite honestly, it was seeing your wife. She is the spitting image of my ex-wife. Hold on just a minute there. She's not the Sophia you were talking about just now, is she? Unfortunately, she is, yes. Wow, I'm getting a very bad feeling about this. I thought you were being a little standoffish with me. Now I'm getting a very nasty feeling that there has been some terrible misunderstanding somewhere along the line. The fact that your wife is now your ex-wife couldn't have anything to do with you thinking I had met her in Seaside by any chance? I'm afraid you're correct on that one as well. Holy cow, what's all this about? Emma asked. Oh, Emma, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Alex. Emma, this is Alex. I gather that you and his wife, Alex, his ex-wife, look very much alike. You remember when we stopped in Seaside for a couple of nights on our honeymoon? From what Alex says, I gather that somehow you were mistaken for his wife, and that led to the end of his marriage. Have I understood you correctly there, Alex? Yeah, that's about it. Oh my God. You thought it was your wife and Luke together? Well, it wasn't your wife with Luke, it was me. What the hell are you going to do now? I haven't got the faintest idea. I've got to think this out before I do anything. I haven't had time to get my thoughts together yet. You realize meeting you two has been a bit of a shock for me. I should imagine it is, but what rotten bugger told you about Seaside in the first place, then? Luke asked. People should really make sure of their facts before they go telling tales. Well, no one actually told me. I was visiting an old friend of mine, and they were on holiday at the same hotel when you were there. They were just showing me some of their old holiday films, and in one of them, you two featured quite prominently. Oh my, I bet that must have been George and Rosemary, Emma said. You remember them, Luke? The nice couple with all those kids. God, 6 children. 2 was enough for me. George had that damn camera running nearly all the time. I don't know how Rosemary put up with it. He left her looking after the children most of the time. You remember meeting them, then? I asked. Oh yes, Luke and I only stayed a couple of nights, but Rosemary and I had some good laughs together while we were there. She was telling me how to keep Luke under control. She was quite a girl. Anyway, that isn't what's important. Your problem now is what are you going to do about Sophia? I'm not sure how I'm going to approach the subject with her. I can understand what you must be feeling like. Finding out that you've made a mistake can be very embarrassing, and to have gotten divorced over a mistaken identity, I'm not sure how you should deal with that. I'm sure Sophia must be very upset that you didn't trust her word. I sat back in my seat and looked at these 2 new friends that I suddenly appeared to have made. They both seemed very genuine and very concerned about Sophia and my plight. For the next hour or so, we talked about what I should do. Then Emma, who had been quiet for a while, said, Look, Alex, I've got an idea. I know this is none of my business really, but how about if I go down to Exeter before your next planned visit to see the children? You must have some idea of the places Sophia normally goes to during the week. Maybe I could run into her by accident, if you understand me. And then, if we look as alike as you say we do, with any luck, she is going to put 2 and 2 together and realize who I am. They'll let her tell me all about it. Then, if she wants to, she can introduce me to you over the weekend. That will make her feel good about herself. Then she's either going to forgive you or kill you. Oh, you'll have to eat humble pie for a while, I'm sure. But if we look as much alike as you say we do, I'll bet she'll understand, Emma suggested. Would you mind doing that? I mean, Sophia and my problems have nothing to do with you. Why should you want to get yourself involved? I asked. Well, in a strange way, I feel obligated. After all, Sophia was mistaken for me. And of course, it isn't every day you get a chance to meet your own doppelganger, now is it? Now, when are you due to go and see the children again? So the arrangements were made. The plan was that the following Thursday, Emma and, I assumed, Brian would go down to Exeter where Emma would, with any luck, run into Sophia at the local horse riding school. For as long as I could remember, Sophia has helped with the riding for the Disabled Association on Thursday mornings. I could see no reason for her to have stopped doing that. Anyway, if things worked out as Emma planned, she thought it most likely that Sophia would ask me to meet her on the Saturday evening, and where she suggested that we could, with any luck, sort our problems out. No, Dad. She hasn't. Isabella started angrily, but then suddenly stopped speaking again. No, Dad. This isn't right. We all made a pact when you married Maya that we would never discuss Mother or what happened between the two of you. It was your idea, remember? Yes, I'm sorry, Isabella, I replied, but I still feel very angry about what she did to me. To us all, really. Although I must admit that I wouldn't have met Maya here but for your mother's lying, cheating ways. I'm sorry. I guess it is your wedding, Isabella. If you want your mother there, I won't object again. But for God's sake, will someone make sure I don't drink too much, because I might well be able to keep a civil tongue in my head where your mother's concerned, but am not sure I could keep my anger under control around that damned holy boyfriend of hers. Isabella made as if to say something else, but apparently changed her mind. I kissed my loving wife, and then I turned and hugged Isabella. On the day of Isabella's wedding, the weather smiled on us. Isabella had been living with Maya and myself since she graduated, so the wedding was being held at our local church. There wasn't any favoritism about her choice to stay with us. It was just the fact that she had been offered a damned good job not too far from the house Maya and I had bought. It was quite a busy household, really, because once Maya's first child had been born, Betty, now retired, had moved in as well. Betty acted as a kind of housekeeper cum nanny, and that had allowed Maya to return to the office. Having walked Isabella to the altar, I took a quick look over my shoulder to smile at Maya, and was pretty well gobsmacked to see her in deep conversation with Sophia. Sophia was actually holding our young child, but when I took my seat later in the service, Sophia had moved to the end of the pew. I still had a distinct distrust of Sophia and wondered what she was up to. I can't say I was too enamored to see that it was Sophia and Betty who escorted both Maya and my babies out of the church either. I wanted to say something to Maya about it, but figured I'd wait until later when we were not in such a public place. After the photo call, I was really surprised and somewhat annoyed to find that Maya had invited Sophia to join us in our limousine for the short journey to the reception at a local hotel. I held my tongue, though I knew that Sophia, like myself, had to be amongst the first arrivals at the hotel so that she could be in the receiving line with us. Sophia chose that opportunity to say hello, but I ignored her. Peter, now if you're going to be silly and spoil Isabella's day, they'll have this car take the children and me straight home, Maya chided me. Good afternoon, Sophia, I said to her with venom in my voice. That was to lead to Maya reading the riot act to me yet again, after dragging me into the hotel's office on our arrival there. Now cut it out, Peter. This is Isabella's day, and I don't want you putting a damper on it for her. Damn it. I've had enough of this ridiculous pride thing with my own family. I don't want to see my new family fall apart because of your damn stupid pride. Sophia cheated on you, and you kicked her out of your life. But please, Peter, don't go kicking your children out with her. You've done miracles up to now with your idea of never discussing Sophia or what she did or didn't do with the children, but you're going to have to meet and talk to her yourself one day, whether you like it or not. Sophia's going to have to be at all kinds of gatherings with us over the next few years. Now's the time to start speaking and being civil to her, for my sake, please. I knew that Maya was right. She nearly always was, so I stood in the receiving line alongside my ex-wife, and she sat beside me during the meal and speeches. I even managed to remember to change the word I to Isabella's mother and myself in my speech. As I sat down, Maya caught my eye and smiled at me. What she made of Sophia taking my hand and kissing the back of it, I don't know. Maya couldn't have heard Sophia say thank you to me. That confused me for a moment, but then I realized that from where she was sitting, Sophia must have been able to read the original script of my speech, so she must have been aware of my impromptu editing. As you can imagine, I avoided dancing with Sophia. After I danced with Isabella's new mother-in-law, I pulled Maya onto the dance floor. My son Daniel was dancing that one with his mother. The evening was enjoyable and, to be honest, although I knew that Sophia was there, I hardly noticed her after a little while. Whether she stayed out of my way on purpose or not, I don't know. Maya and Betty took the two little ones home early, but Maya insisted that I stay until the end, or at least until Isabella and her new husband left or went to bed. That, I feared, would be pretty late because they were spending their first married night in the hotel's honeymoon suite. I had slipped outside to smoke a cigar. The youngsters were still living it up on the dance floor, and to be honest, the noise of their modern music was getting at me a bit. "They are two beautiful babies," a familiar voice said from behind me. I didn't look in her direction. I knew damned well who it was. "They are just like their mother," I replied. "Take that, woman," I thought to myself. Look, I might have been trying to be civil, but that didn't mean I still wasn't angry with Sophia. "Maya is very beautiful. You made a good choice there," Sophia agreed with me. "What do you want, Sophia? Why have you followed me out here?" I asked, trying to sound as cold as my heart felt towards her. "To apologize to you, Peter." I looked in her direction then, hoping she'd see the hate on my face, but I think it was too dark. I couldn't make out her features. "A bit late, don't you think?" I suggested. "You're not kidding. I only wish it had never happened in the first place, or that ID had the guts to own up and beg for your forgiveness when you brought that damn CD back from Springfield. God, I was stupid, and I'm so sorry." I thought that I could detect that Sophia was crying, although I couldn't see in the darkness. "How long did it go on for, Sophia? How long were you taking the piss out of me behind my back?" "It was only once, Peter. Haven't the children told you?" I almost burst out laughing. I know that Sophia heard me kind of grunt when I barely managed to strangle my laughter. "It's the truth, Peter. I know that you won't believe me, but I never went near any drugs or anything after that weekend. I promise you." Now Sophia had completely lost me. I had no idea what she was talking about. What did drugs have to do with anything? My mind was asking me, "What the hell are you talking about, Sophia?" "Pete, can we go somewhere private and talk for a little while? I'd like to explain everything to you. I know ITLL never make any difference to us now. It's much too late for that. I must have been mad not to have come clean with you in the first place, but I just didn't know what to do. All I could think of was to try to lie my way out of it like I did when I should have been telling you what actually happened. It was just that so many years had passed, and I'd been lulled into a false sense of security that you'd never find out. And then when I saw the video, I panicked. All I could think to do was lie and keep on lying. Both you and I have been drinking, Sophia. I really don't think it would be a good idea for you to tell me anything tonight. I'm not sure that I could control my emotions," I said to her. Even in the dark, I could see the expression on Sophia's face change. "Don't get me wrong, Sophia. I feel nothing but anger towards you and what you did to me. If and when I learn the full facts, I'd like to be in full control of my faculties. I've only ever come near striking two women in my life, and you are one of them." Sophia took a step back. "I think I can understand that. But who was the other?" she asked. "Your friend Emma, or whatever her name is." "Look, Sophia, if you want to allay your conscience, you've got a room booked here tonight, haven't you?" Sophia nodded. "Right then, they'll meet you in the lounge at 10 tomorrow morning, and he'll give you an hour or as long as I can control my anger." "Thank you, Peter." "Oh, and I will have Maya with me, by the way. I don't go meeting wanted women without bringing my wife along." "Touché," Sophia replied. "I deserve that, Peter. In the lounge tomorrow morning at 10. They'll be there." Then Sophia turned and started to walk back inside the ballroom. Just before she went through the door, she stopped and turned to look back at me. "Thank you, Peter. Good night," she said. I didn't reply. When ID finished my cigar and went back inside, there was no sign of Sophia anywhere. "Good. It's about time you cleared the air with Sophia over all this. You really do need to know what it was all about," Maya said when I told her I was meeting Sophia on Sunday morning. "You sound like you know what Sophia's going to say," I replied. "I do. The children told me years ago." "Huh. Why did they do that?" "Because they wanted me to tell you about what happened. They hoped that you might not hate her so much. But I told them that it was between you and Sophia and I wasn't going to get involved, especially with the way you went off at anyone who mentioned her name." "Yeah, I've been a bit paranoid over it, haven't I?" "No, I don't really think so, Peter. You love Sophia. I know you did, and most probably you still do. That's the only worry I've got about you talking to her. I took Maya into my arms and kissed her. My love, how come you know me so well? And you're right on both counts. I think in my heart I do still hold some love for Sophia, but I also hate her for what she did and all of the lies she's told. Don't worry, love. There's no way that she could ever come between us. I only agreed to see her again this morning because I have a burning desire to know what I did wrong. Maya pushed me away so that she could look into my eyes. What you did wrong? She asked with a quizzical look on her face. Peter, you did nothing wrong. It was Sophia who did something remarkably stupid and cruel. But there must have been something that I did or said to make her look elsewhere. No, Peter, believe me. From what the children have told me, it was nothing that you did. It was all down to Sophia letting her friends talk her into doing something incredibly stupid. Then Sophia found that things had gotten completely out of her control. I think it best that I don't say anymore. You just go and hear what she has to say to you. I'm not going, Maya. We're going. I have no intention of meeting Sophia alone. A smile came on Maya's face, and she stretched up and kissed me. As I hoped, the hotel lounge was almost empty. There were only 2 other people in there besides Sophia, Daniel, and Grace. As Maya and I walked in, Daniel hugged his mother, then walked over and hugged Maya, then rather formally shook my hand. I noted that Grace did not show any open form of affection toward her mother. ID gathered through the grapevine that it had taken a long time for Grace to forgive Sophia if she really had, and although she did talk to her, she rarely visited. Grace, after waiting her turn, kissed me on the cheek and then did the same to Maya. I noted a look of sadness come into Sophia's eyes, most likely caused by Grace's display of affection towards Maya. I suddenly realized that Daniel was speaking to me. The bar. The manager said you can have some privacy in there, but we will be able to see you from the foyer. Sophia had stood up while Daniel was talking. She led the way into the bar that had one of those silk ropes across the entrance. An easel stood in front of the rope that bore the sign Private Conference. I followed Sophia to a table that was already adorned with a coffee tray on it. She sat down and began pouring us both coffees without asking me whether I actually wanted one. I sat opposite her without making a comment. Thanks for coming, Peter, she said as she passed the coffee to me. I still didn't speak. This was her show. There were all kinds of questions that I wanted to be answered, but I had convinced myself not to ask them. I was intending to let her hang herself first. I'm going to repeat that I'm really sorry for all the lies I told you. I'm not sure if I'm more annoyed with myself about those lies than I am about what I did with Brian. I didn't realize what I was doing with Brian until it was too late, but I told all of those lies to you in cold blood, and then I kept on lying to you, trying to convince you that nothing had ever happened. Sophia was waffling. I almost broke my silence and said, "Get on with it, woman," but managed to hold my tongue. But you don't want to know how sorry I am, do you, Pete? You want to know what happened and why? I still refused to speak. Sophia looked down at her hands in her lap, somewhere out of my sight. I figured that she was wringing them together. I'd seen her do that in the pub that day when Brian and Emma were there. Pete, when you went out to Mumbai for all that time, I got lonely. Sophia suddenly raised her eyes to look into mine. No, not for mail company or anything like that. I was just missing you. Well, you know that Helen and I used to have coffee every morning together. Well, it was in the second week that you were away, I think, that Helen's friend Natalie started joining us sometimes. I took in a deep breath at the sound of Natalie's name. We'd been at a party at Helen and Chris Allen's place one night when Sam had thrown Natalie and the guy she'd been with out of the house. Sam had caught them smoking weed in the back garden. As far as I knew, Sam had forbidden his wife to have any contact with the woman afterward. I know it was a bloody stupid thing to do, but one day, the 3 of us went shopping together. On the way back, we stopped over at Natalie's house. For some reason, Natalie lit up one of her funny cigarettes, and, well, I'm not sure what happened after that. Look, Pete, I can only think that I must have been affected by the fumes coming off that damn thing. Sophia looked down again and stopped speaking. I dreaded what she was going to say next. I was feeling very down, and Natalie suggested I take a drag of her reefer thing. God, I don't know why I did, but I did. Although I choked a bit, I hadn't smoked cigarettes since I first got pregnant with Isabella. I don't know. Somehow it did make me feel a little better. And, well, Peter, the three of us smoked another one before I picked the children up that day. I'm sorry, Pete, but over the following couple of weeks, Helen and I went around to Natalie's house quite a few times and smoked pot. I really couldn't see that it was doing any harm. I just thought it was making me feel better and miss you a little less. I was having some wonderful dreams about you at night. I can remember that. But then my folks came down and took the children away on the trip with them, so I had no reason to rush home to the house until it was time for you to call. So I'd stay at Natalie's after Helen left. That's when it all got out of hand. Sophia was not looking at me anymore. She was staring into space. Brian turned up at Natalie's house one afternoon. He's a distant cousin of hers or something. Anyway, Natalie decided to have a kind of party to welcome him to the country. I didn't know that Head just been released from prison in America for drug smuggling. I found out later Head come to England to get away from the authorities' prying eyes over there. I told them I couldn't stay for the party that evening because I had to be home for when you called. But look, Pete, those reefers of Natalie's had more effect on me than I'd ever realized. I thought I knew what I was doing. Brian said Head come around and fix the telephone, then I could go back to the party and call you from there. I could just tell you the home phone was out of order. Like the silly idiot I am, I let him do just that. Everyone went very quiet when I called you later in the evening. I'd drunk a lot of vodka by then as well as being high on those damned weeds of Natalie's. Thinking back, I'm surprised you didn't notice that I was drunk when I called you that night. I remember the call distinctly, Sophia. You were extremely emotional that night and very weepy, but I had no idea that you had turned into a drunk drug addict. I informed her. I wasn't an addict. I never got that far into it, Peter. Although I'll admit that I got a damned sight further and later that night. Sophia started crying and didn't say anything more for a little while. I was feeling very uncomfortable. My instincts were telling me to put my arm around Sophia and comfort her. You know, if it had been any other woman in the world, I probably would have done just that. But as it was Sophia, I tried to ignore her and looked around the room. It was later that night that it all turned to hell. There were only about 5 or 6 people left when I noticed Brian and Natalie doing something with a mirror. Then I saw Brian take a straw and sniff something up his nose. Then Natalie did the same thing. Well, nearly everyone did. They invited me and this other girl to try some. I wasn't daft. I knew it was coke, so I refused. But then some other guy said something like, "Try this, it's out of this world," and handed me a pill. I told him to sod off, but he said it would just be like having one too many drinks and then going to bed. You would have one hell of a night's sleep. God, Pete, I thought that was exactly what I needed. My head was swimming after all the vodka I had drunk, and I was tired. So I took the damn pill and then must have fallen asleep. The next thing I can remember is waking up in Natalie's spare bedroom, and Brian was beside me. It wasn't until later that I realized that I was naked and he was, well, asleep beside me. I can remember jumping out of bed and running to the bathroom. I looked into the mirror and, oh God, Peter, what a mess I looked. Sophia stopped talking again and began to cry harder. I was sick and crying and didn't know what to do. I washed and got dressed and then went home. When I got back, I went to bed and fell asleep again. My head was pounding when I woke up in the morning. God, Pete, I felt like a right tramp. You acted like one as well, I commented. Yes, I know that now. Anyway, the following day, my folks called to say that they were staying on for another week. They asked if it was okay with me if they took the children over to France with them because one of their friends was lending them a holiday cottage there. They asked whether you had come back early, but I told them you hadn't, and I wasn't sure when you were coming home. Sophia stopped talking and looked at me. I thought she was about to cry again, but she continued. Peter, I wanted to tell you all of this when you got back, but then I bottled it. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I was sure that if you found out, you would leave me and take the children. I just couldn't bring myself to let you know what I'd done. Well, Brian found out that I had your telephone number in Mumbai, and he started calling me. God, Pete, I was scared of what he might tell you. I could see you going completely berserk. I thought you'd come back from Mumbai and then beat him to death or something. He kept calling me, and I just had to do whatever he told me to do. I didn't know how to stop him, so I did as he asked. But I refused to go to his place again, so he told me to meet him in Seaside, where he had taken a room for us. I had to tell you that I was away for the weekend with Helen. I can remember that Brian arranged for me to meet him at the railway station. Then we went to that hotel. Pete, He forced me into bed with him again. Don't give me that crap, Sophia. I'll admit you could have been half out of it the first time, but don't tell me that the second time was anything but a voluntary thing. You could have told me what was going on when I got back from Brazil. If you didn't have the guts to do that, then you could have told me when I first showed you that video. But no, you kept lying to me, and you carried on lying to me even after you realized that I had found you out. Yes, Pete, you're right. I should have told you what happened in Seaside, and then I should have just told you the truth when you showed me that video. If I had, things would never have gotten as bad as they did. But I panicked. I just couldn't bring myself to own up to my stupidity. I was convinced that you would beat me, or even kill me. I just couldn't bring myself to tell you the truth. So you've just kept lying to me ever since, then? Yes, Pete. I'm sorry, but I have. Sophia had started to cry again. Well, Sophia, you got what you wanted, didn't you? When it comes down to it, you're not the only one who has been crying all of these years. I think I cried more than I drank the whole time we were separated. I've lost count of the number of times I found myself standing on the jetty with a piece of rope in my hands. Pete, don't say that. I have to say that, Sophia. I have to let you know how much I've suffered. All because you were too frightened of your own shadow to tell me the truth. Yes, I still love you, Sophia, but I also hate you, and am not sure that I'll ever be able to forgive you for what you did to me. Sophia suddenly stood up and came around the table. She grabbed me and hugged me. I'm sorry, Pete. I wish I could make it all go away, but I can't. All I can say is that if I had the time again, I wouldn't have done what I did. But I didn't realize what I was doing until it was too late. I stood up and then gently pushed Sophia away from me. It's too late now, Sophia. The damage has been done. You destroyed me when you lied to me all those years ago. I can't live with the memory of what you did to me, Sophia. I've remarried, and I've moved on. You have to do the same. Sophia's tears began to fall again as she realized that this was truly the end of us. I'm sorry, Pete, she whispered before turning and leaving the room. I didn't move as I watched Sophia leave. I didn't know what to do with myself, but I had to accept that things were over between us. I had to let go and focus on my new life with Maya and our children. And with that, I finally found some peace. Thanks for watching. Life can throw us into situations where trust, love, and loyalty are tested beyond measure. What would you do if you found out years later that a decision you made changed everything? Would you try to rebuild or move on? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe